In one of the uglier Eagles games that I can recall, they fall to 2-5 with a loss in the desert to a Vegas Raiders team that basically picked them apart and had their way. It is the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. I'm your host, Mike Gill. What's going on, everybody? It was a dreadful display after the first drive, which, by the way, was maybe their best drive of the year. It looked like, holy mackerel, they did do some self-scouting. They did look at themselves in the mirror. And after the first drive, they decided, that didn't work very well. Scoring very easily, driving right down the field, that's not really what we want to do. Let's go back to sucking, and our offense being an absolute high school level joke is what we saw on Sunday. Nick Sirianni's offense, dreadful. Jonathan Gannon's defense, pathetic. And the Eagles lose to a Raiders team that on Sunday appeared to be a Super Bowl level contender. I mean, they had their way. Derek Carr completed 91% of his passes. 91% of his passes. He was 31 of 32 with 2 touchdowns on the day as the Raiders really just had their way with the Eagles. There's so many different angles we can kind of dive into. We want to hear from you, as always, at 609 403 0973, 609 403 0973. That's the text board. You can hit us up on the free mobile app as well. Download the app through the Apple Store or Google Play and direct message us through your phone. And, of course, if you're watching the show live via the 97.3 ESPN Facebook channel, you can leave us a live comment in the comments section. I mean, where do we begin? They go right down the field and score. They hand the ball off. I mean, they basically power run and do a great job. The Raiders are thinking, wait, what is this team here? We didn't see any of this on film. They went up under center, handed the ball off. I mean, just a really beautiful drive. You got to hand it to him, right? Nick Sirianni, put it this way. He's got it in him. He's got it in him to line up under center, turn around, and hand the ball off and let his offensive line do a job. The Eagles' offensive line running the football had a great day yesterday in the first drive. Jordan Mailata, who had a rough day at the office, and it appears that he was playing injured. I mean, I'm thinking to myself, he just doesn't look right. I mean, obviously you saw him walking off the field. He was hobbled. He was kind of limping off the field. There's some talk today that he just wasn't 100%. He didn't look 100% because the tackles, typically a strong, a strong point of this team with Mailata and Johnson. Both of them had a tough day at the office in the pass game. And Ngakoue just absolutely whipped Mailata all day long yesterday. But you look at Miles Sanders before he went out with an injury, and I said it, soon as he got hurt, soon as he got carted off the field, I said, they will not run the ball the rest of the day. Sanders, 6 carries, 30 yards. That first drive, let's look back at how perfect that drive went. I mean, they came out, they threw the ball. Okay, you threw the ball on first down, but you didn't say, okay, that first pass was incomplete. We got to throw again. They went to the ground. They got 3 yards. There's a holding penalty. That helps them out. They get another run, 5 yards. They try to shot down the field on 2nd and 5. I'm okay with that. They hand it off again, 9 yards. They hand it off again, 7 yards. They hand it off again, another yard. And then they throw the touchdown pass. The pass to Goddard is a 24-yard pass because it's play action. And the Raider defense saw you up under center. You handed the ball off twice in a row, and then they've decided, all right, maybe they will actually run the ball here. You got Goddard behind the defense. He's wide open. A nice pitch and catch by Jalen Hurts, and it leads to a touchdown. And then, that wonky situation with the punt. They didn't take the penalty. Vegas converts. Now, that whole situation is odd. I tried to be not irrational, so I didn't blast Sirianni right off the bat. I'm thinking, what is he trying to do here? What is he trying to accomplish? And I guess, analytically, if you look at it, he's saying we would have gone for it on 4th and 4. So he's suggesting they would have gone for it on 4th and 4, and he'd rather have them at 3rd and 13 or 3rd and 14 than 4th and 4. Well, it appeared to me anyway that the Raiders were going to punt the ball. So it's like Sirianni didn't take into account that just because he would have gone for it, that the Raiders might not go for it. So that whole situation was a little wonky. They end up getting an interception there, so it didn't end up backfiring on them. And then after the interception, I mean, think about it. You went right down the field and scored. Then you get the interception and have the ball back. You go on an 8-play drive that went 22 yards. The 8-play drive goes 22 yards, and in that 8-play drive, Hurts pass, 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 and then they punt. They ran the ball one time for 5 yards, but 1 for 5 works for me. But all the pass, they have to punt, and then after that, the Raiders just took the ball and had their way the rest of the day. They score, you punt, they score again, you fumble. I mean, it was just a comedy of errors after that point of the game. Just absolutely outmatched, outclassed in every sense of the word. The Raiders went touchdown, touchdown, field goal, touchdown, touchdown before they finally punted, and then they kicked the field goal, touchdown again. I mean, I have zoned in on the inefficiencies of the offense so far, but Jonathan Gannon will get his own segment as well. Nick Sirianni has been an F for me every single week, other than the Atlanta game when I thought he did a really nice job in the opener. I thought Nick Sirianni did a fine job in Atlanta. Since then, he has essentially been an F every single week as the offensive play caller, and now it is creeping into being the head coach of the football team. He looks completely overmatched. And now the problem is becoming, he sounds like he's taking shots at the defensive coordinator. The defensive players are starting to question the defensive coordinator's play calls. Fletcher Cox yesterday, I just do what I'm called for, but it's frustrating. He's frustrated. This team has given up 32.5 points a game over the last 5 weeks. The only team that gives up more are the Jets. The offense yesterday was so inept after the first series of the game. You just cannot compete with the play design and the play call that Nick Sirianni's throwing out there. You can't do it. It is so basic and it is so predictable. That's the thing. It is so predictable. They were talking in the postgame yesterday whether or not this team has enough talent. You know, quite frankly, their offensive line got whipped yesterday, but their line is typically not a problem. They got whipped yesterday. Well, Nick Sirianni, you would imagine that he's saying, look, my line's having some problems today. For whatever reason, they're having some problems. Maybe I need to go back to what worked. Let's put the ball on the ground. Now, they lose Miles Sanders, and that turns into a whole nother situation. Now, he said losing Sanders didn't change the play calling, but it is obvious that they did not feel comfortable running the ball after Sanders went out. Sanders had 6 carries. Now, Boston Scott did come in, got some carries, and I thought, for the most part, did a nice job. Gainwell fumbled the ball. So soon as the fumble for Gainwell happened, I'm thinking to myself, the run game is out the window, completely out the window. There's a lot of problems, too. Now, Goddard, I talked about this the other day. He had 3 catches for 70 yards. He opens up their offense. They did play action. And when the tight end is one of your best weapons, how do you get him involved? You run play action. You get him behind the linebackers. He is able to catch and run after the play. We saw 3 examples of Goddard being a playmaker. He averaged 23.3 yards per catch from a tight end. I thought Devonta Smith had a real tough day yesterday. Now, some of them, the throws are behind, but Devonta Smith has been a little inconsistent. You look at what Jamar Chase is doing with the Bengals, and you're thinking, hey, look, I'm not expecting all rookie receivers to be Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase. But for the most part, I'm not seeing a lot of advancement from Devonta Smith. And he was a guy who was billed as a guy who catches everything, and he has had some drop issues. The offense just unimaginable, not creative. And look, Jalen Hurts, he's got way too much on his plate. He carried the ball 13 times yesterday. He's running for his life. He's not accurate enough. I'm not sitting here ripping the kid. Could you win with this guy? Maybe. But he certainly hasn't done anything that makes you say they have their guy fix around him. There's just too many issues offensively, and it starts with the play caller. Look, it's one of those things where when you are light in talent, that's one thing. But when you are light in talent and your play caller, your coaching is holding you back, that's a problem. You know, you can scheme around the deficiencies. The Eagles coaching staff, they say it after every game. I got to do a better job. You got to put the guys in better position. They're not doing that. That's the problem. They're not putting their guys in better position. They're not doing a better job. This team is not a Super Bowl talent team. But I think there's a lot of teams in this league that would say, I'll take your offensive line. You give me that Eagles offensive line. I think most teams in this league would take the Eagles offensive line. Now, they got whipped yesterday. There's no sugarcoating that. My Lotta had a rough day at the office. I thought Lane Johnson was just okay. He wasn't great. The interior of the line had a tough day. The offensive line, which is typically a strength of this team, did not perform very well yesterday. I thought that was one of the most disappointing things of the game. The other most disappointing thing of the day was the defensive line for Philadelphia, we thought was a clear advantage against a very weak Vegas offensive line, and you lost that battle. The Vegas offensive line beat you. And I thought the game was won on the two lines. Their line beating yours and your line getting whipped by them. And then after that, you know, it's all pitch and catch, make plays, playmakers. Text messages are coming in at 609-403-0973. Man, I can't wait to hear what you guys say. If you go to our website, 973ESPN.com, Eagles fans blast at this team over on our website. You could check out the reaction of what Eagle fans think of Nick Sirianni right now at 973ESPN.com. I'll read off some of those throughout the day. Your text message is coming in now. Yeah, Mike, the coaching is bad, but what about Hurts' completion percentage? I mean, look, man, if it wasn't for teams like Tampa, Dallas, Vegas playing prevent D at the end, I wonder what the percentage would be. Look, Jalen Hurts, to me, is in a tough situation. He's a young player who was a kind of a project coming in, and now you have a coach who is just not ready to perform his duty at this level, and you're asking a young quarterback to be groomed by a coach who is learning on the fly. Nick Sirianni is not calling a game that's conducive to where Jalen Hurts is in his progression as a quarterback in the NFL. Nick Sirianni is putting way too much on his plate. And what he's putting on his plate isn't even all that advanced. The problem is, that's the issue. What he's calling isn't advanced. It is so basic that it's not giving the quarterback a chance. You're not disguising anything. You're not causing confusion. You're just saying, go back. And like I tweeted this yesterday. You know, like you play a game of Madden football, and when you start the game, you have it in your mind. At least I did anyway. And maybe this is why I wasn't a good Madden football player. But you start that game, and you're like, I'm going to play this game like it's a real football game. I'm going to hand the ball off. I'm going to run. And then that doesn't work. You punt it away, and then the other team scores against you. And now you're down, and you're like, well, I'm losing. I got to just start throwing the ball. And you just throw the ball every single play. That's what the Eagles did. They played John Madden football yesterday when the other player was just better than them. Oh, I tried to run. I wanted to play like it was a real football game, but they scored already, so I got to throw that out the window. And I'm just going to chuck it every single time. Can't win like that. Croce checks in on the text board. Mike, no point in pointing out how bad Sirianni is since it happens every week, but why not put Flacco in to see if a veteran quarterback can run Sirianni's offense better? The game was over at halftime. Anything the Eagles scored after that were trash points and were never in this game at all. No, they were not in this game at all. The Flacco thing, I mean, this season is about finding out whether or not Jalen Hurts can play. You're trying to say, hey, let's find out if Sirianni's offense works. Hey, to me, if you want to find out if Sirianni's offense works, I would much rather take a shot and see if Gardner Minshew could execute some of this. He is a guy who has been he's won games in the NFL. But that's the point is this. This organization is not going to hand the keys to Gardner Minshew or Joe Flacco. They are trying to find out whether Jalen Hurts is the quarterback, and they need more than 11 games and 7 in this system. The problem is this system is not helping this kid out. So putting Joe Flacco in there is going to do what? You're saying, let's see if Sirianni's offense works. Quite frankly, I don't think Nick Sirianni's offense is going to help Joe Flacco's not going to execute this offense. Jalen Hurts ran the ball 13 times yesterday. The whole offense is based on simple RPO. Joe Flacco's not running RPO. Sal B checks in. New GM, new coach, new quarterback. Here's the thing. And look, I get everybody's frustrations when they lose. Especially, it just exemplifies the issues that this team has. They lack talent in a lot of areas. But right now, I think the bigger problem is the coach. I don't blame the coach all that often. I'm not a big blame the coach guy. But in the NFL, the coach is, to me, in the NFL, the coach is a big factor. He calls every play. And this coach is in over his head. I don't think this team is completely devoid of talent. Give me a spot on offense where you're like, man, they're really bad there. I mean, their receivers aren't like, you don't have Jamar Chase. You don't have that A-plus number one wide receiver. But their receivers aren't as bad as the unit that went to the playoffs in 2019 with Greg Ward and that crew. They're better than that. They've got one of the best pass-catching tight ends in the league. Now, they don't run the ball a whole heck of a lot. Well, that's not Sanders' fault. So I would say their talent on offense it's good. It's not great. They don't have a great player on offense, but their offense, they should be able to be much better offensively than they are. On the defensive side of the ball, look, John Gannon's terrible. He's been terrible so far. And we talked about it. Well, against some of the worst teams, they've done okay. They played okay against Atlanta, who's now 3-3, by the way. They played okay against Carolina, who lost yesterday to the Giants. I mean, but anytime they've stepped up and played a quarterback of any decency, they've gotten blitzed. Here's the thing. I mean, it's crazy. Think about this. Like, I get it. Fire everybody. Fire this guy. Fire that guy. They already did that. You guys wanted Jim Schwartz fired. They fired him. You wanted Doug Peterson fired. They fired him. You wanted them to trade Wentz. They did. The Eagles listened to all your ideas. They didn't work. We always say, get rid of this guy. He stinks. That guy stinks. He's terrible. He doesn't know what to do. John Gannon, he's what the league is right now. Cover 2, tackle, no big plays, keep everything in front. Is it John Gannon stinks or is the defensive talent not there? It's hard to tell. 609-403-0973. Jason Goldstein, 2 weeks ago, play calling wasn't an issue. Says who? The play calling's been an issue in every game except for Atlanta. In every game, the play calling has been. I give I'll give Sirianni credit in week 1. He did a great job. I thought Sirianni against Atlanta did a great job. 2 weeks ago, no, the play calling wasn't good. 2 weeks ago, play calling, not good, Jay Goldstein. I don't know what game you watched. 2 weeks ago, play calling, not good at all. So now magically it is? No. Play calling's been awful on both sides of the ball. (609-403-0973). Jason Goldstein, you need to find a clue because 2 weeks ago, the play calling was an issue. Was an issue in all of these games so far, even games they've won, except for Atlanta. Except for Atlanta. I will give Sirianni the credit he deserves. In the Atlanta game, he did a really good job. He called a good game. They had very good play design. I don't know what happened. I have not seen the team look like the Atlanta offense, period, since. So, Goldstein, you're beat. 609-403-0973. Uzi Wolf, this is interesting. Anybody else starting to think Hurts is holding Sirianni back on play calls? Dude can't throw accurately, minus a screen pass. Middle and long shots are horrific. That's interesting. Look, I would agree that Hurts has a lot of warts in his accuracy. He's throwing the ball behind, much like last year. Look, I said I didn't mind Peterson's play calls last year. The problem I had was Carson Wentz. Simple pitch and catch. If you can't hit a guy open, the difference in down and distance, it doesn't have to be a big play all the time. But Hurts is missing guys in the intermediates, man. He's missing them, and he's not getting help. Like, yeah, the one throws behind Devonta Smith. You got to catch the ball, Smith. But that throw, if it's in front, he not only catches it, he probably gets more yards up the field. Kyle Dubray, I like some of the talent, but I don't see enough fight, especially on defense. Well, the defense, we haven't even got to yet. I'll get to the defense in just a bit. But I think the defense is ready to crack. The look in their faces of like, we have no answer. We don't believe in any of the play calls coming in. That's an issue. Fletcher Cox said some stuff after the game that is concerning. 609-403-0973. Frank checks in, says, I miss Doug. Hey, a lot of times we want guys fired, and then we realize we blame the wrong guy. You remember? Doug Peterson didn't deserve to be fired. Doug Peterson didn't deserve to be fired at all. The team last year, the year before, look, I tweeted this out yesterday. Last year, the year before, this team was just crippled by injuries. And it's not an excuse. It's why they were bad. Past few years, banged up, mash unit, guys getting old. That's what happens after you win a Super Bowl and then you make decisions. The Eagles made decisions that were based on emotion. They wanted to keep their only Super Bowl team together, and they made some emotional decisions. So I get it. And then those players, it's like the 93 Phillies. They wanted to keep the 93 Phillies around, and some of those guys just started to get beat up and broken down, and the team just fell apart. That's kind of like the Eagles. They wanted to keep the Super Bowl team intact, so they made some emotional decisions. Well, because of that, here's the result. So now they have to kind of, those guys the last couple of years were banged up. But they never felt unprepared. They just seemed outmanned a lot. This year, they seem unprepared. 609-403-0973. There's so much to get into. There's so many questions I have. There's so much I want to hear from you guys out there. 609-403-0973 is the text board. 609-403-0973. Hit me up there. Also, if you're watching the show on the live video, you can hit me up over there. And download the free mobile app, and you can message us through the app on your phone. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. It is brought to you by Matt Blatt Kia. They want to get you approved today. Matt Blatt, 6211 Black Horse Pike in Egg Harbor Township. All right, coming up, busy show today. All your texts, I see them. All your messages on the video, I see them. If you're listening on the mobile app, message me through the phone. I will open up those apps as well so that I can get those messages into the mix. Mike McGarry, Grayson's Grades, Jeff Mosher, Casey Joyner, Jeff Kerr on the football. I got some basketball as well. The latest on Ben Simmons and the Sixers who will play tomorrow night. Keep it here. The Sports Bash is just getting started on a Monday edition here on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. 3:31 Sports Bash. Mike McGarry in 9 minutes. Grayson's grades 29 minutes. Your grades right now 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. Reading off the video stream, the text messages, all the messages coming in on the free mobile app as well. You can DM me through the app if you're listening on the app. Take the show on the go. Download the app in the Apple Store or Google Play. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN. Look, I don't have an answer for Hurts. I don't know if he can play or not. I'm not anti-Hurts, but I don't think the coach is helping him out. That being said, I think Hurts has had some issues. I mean, there are guys open. He's missing them. He's behind them. Sirianni admitted that yesterday. He said, well, look, you're not going to be completing, you throw 34 passes. They're not all going to be on the nose. And he's right about that. But the ones that are easy pitches and catches, he's got to complete those. And the more times you don't, the more questions that come out. 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. 0973. Mike, Howie Roseman is responsible for all of it. All of it. Fire him today. I asked the question on Twitter, and I haven't got an answer that is very sufficient yet. We want everybody fired, and Roseman, we want fired as well. Who do you want to replace him with? Here's the answer that I got. TF, if I know, not like we have a list of people to base this off of. That was one. Here's another one. Because we have a free agent GM list just lying around. Every time we want a guy fired, somebody has to get hired. You wanted Jim Schwartz out, he's fired. This is what you got. If you want Howie Roseman fired, give me a guy you want to replace him with. Joe Douglas, he was supposed to be the guy. The Jets are the worst team in football right now. They're the worst team in football. Joe Douglas is the GM of the worst team in football. So, yeah, I don't have any problem with Howie Roseman getting fired. I would make it, I'm not a big Howie hater. The guy won a Super Bowl, okay? The guy won the Super Bowl. If you want to get rid of him, I have no objection to that. That being said, give me somebody to replace him. Give me somebody to get me excited about. Give me someone that I would say, all right, let's bring this guy in. That's a good job. Because every guy that comes in so far, you want Gabe Kapler fired, he goes and wins 107 games. The guy you brought in, he stinks. You wanted Brett Brown fired. The next guy comes in, Doc Rivers. Now you want him fired. Now the next guy comes in. You wanted Peterson fired. This guy comes in. Now you want him fired. You see the pattern here? We want everybody fired. This team right now has a lot of issues. But I don't think it is a devoid of complete talent. Yeah, do they need more talent? Sure, they won the Super Bowl. They got old, and now they got to start replenishing. I mean, they have been. The Eagles essentially have been a playoff team for 25 years. Yeah, they don't make it every year. Nobody does. I got more still to come. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City will check in on the weekend. The Giants got a victory over the weekend. No Dallas this week. Washington lost. 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. Terry from Galloway, we want you fired too, Mike Gill. Hey, I'm okay with that. You want me fired, Terry? That's okay. I expect that. I don't like you as a listener. How's that? I like you fired. I'm just kidding, Terry. You can listen as much as you want. Not everybody likes me. Not everybody. Some do, some don't. Terry, you might be in the don't crowd. That's okay. I like you, buddy. You're a long-time texter. You're listening. That's all I care about. Whether you like me or not, that's fine. One of these days I'll be fired, I'm sure. One of these days I will be fired. 609-403-0973. All right, Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City joins me next. 2:41 on a Monday, the day after another pathetic effort by the Eagles. The fans are not happy. Now everybody needs to be fired again, Mike McGarry. They already did that. See, the Eagles listened to the fans. They wanted Peterson fired. That didn't work. They wanted Schwartz fired. That didn't work. They wanted Wentz traded. That didn't work. They listened to the fans already, didn't they?
Yeah, they did, and they're certainly off to not a great start this season. Yesterday, just a tough game to watch, and a game that a couple things I take out of it is, number one, right now, and I always say the NFL, you go week to week, right? Right now, Sirianni looks lost. He might not look lost next week. He might not look lost 3 weeks from now. He might not look lost 2 years from now. But right now, he looks lost. And I think that play in the first quarter, when everybody in the Delaware Valley or roots for the Eagles knew to decline the penalty, and he took the penalty, I think that one play sort of crystallizes, just kind of his struggles so far through the first couple of weeks of the season. The other thing is, Jalen Hurts does not look to be a guy that you can really depend on as a starting quarterback. To me, he's the king of meaningless stats. When the game matters, he's got 80 yards passing. When the game ends, he's got like 300 yards passing and so many rushing yards, but so much of that happens when the game has already been decided.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I agree to this extent that Sirianni looks in way over his head. They come out, they run the ball, they get a nice drive, they go right down the field, they run a little play action, and then they completely went away from it and went right back to where they were before. So is it Hurts or is it the play calling? Is it a combination of the two? Why is the offense struggling? Is it more the play caller or is it more the quarterback?
It's clearly both to me, right? And again, I was running around yesterday. I was listening to Merrill Reese broadcast the game, and he kept going back to the fact that the Eagles looked so good on that first drive. The easy explanation for that, I mean, they had, 10 days off? Sirianni obviously did a good job of scripting that first drive, and once you had to go off the script, he couldn't make the adjustments or, call plays away from that script that worked, basically. So I think it's a combination of both. And the troublesome sign after the game is you have some players, namely Fletcher Cox, coming out and kind of saying, hey, the coaches aren't calling aggressive and stuff like that. To me, that's a warning sign because, that means, red flag to me that the coaches might be losing the locker room. And if that happens, it's going to be a long, long season.
Yeah, what do you make of, you're right about that, Mike, the fact that Fletcher Cox has come out, he said, look, they're changing what I'm doing. I don't call the plays. He's obviously frustrated. But when Nick Sirianni says after the game, well, I don't really get to watch the defense because I'm doing a lot of my offensive coordinator stuff. Like in his mind, it sounds like he thinks he's an offensive coordinator and not a head coach. That comment really stood out to me.
Yeah, absolutely. That's another thing we go back to it. Hey, you're in over your head. When you're the head coach, you're the head coach of the entire team, not just the offense, basically. And you can't just think about the offense. You have to think about the defense and game management and everything else. It's why a lot of head coaches don't call plays also because there is a lot to do during games and stuff like that. So you got to be worried about the overall philosophy of the team. And if you're coming out and saying, as he said, the defense has got to be more aggressive. I mean, hey, isn't that something you got to say, going into the season? I want a defense that plays aggressive and does this, this, and that. And then Gannon, the defensive coordinator, has to execute that. And something is clearly lost in the translation there, 7 weeks into the season.
Yeah, I mean, they were discussing yesterday in the post game about whether or not this team is completely devoid of talent. Do they lack so much talent that they're just not a competitive group? Or is it the coaching that, like, if they had better coaching, are they more competitive?
Maybe a game more competitive, but you're looking at a team, they're not as talented as we think they are, or as the average Eagles fan might think they are. They won 4 games last year. They're 2-5 this year. I mean, people that started talking in the preseason that started saying, hey, they're going to go from 4 wins to 10 or 11. That's just crazy talk. I mean, they're an aging team, an aging defense with some aging star players on the offensive line, on the defensive line. They have problems with injuries. They're not as talented as we think they are.
No, I agree with that. They have average talent, but I guess in the years past under Peterson, here's what it looks like when you watch this team the last couple of years. they made a lot of emotional decisions after the Super Bowl and kept guys they probably should have let go. Then the age thing, as you mentioned, started to kind of creep in. They were breaking down over. It was like the 93 Phillies. Like, we went to the World Series. We got to keep this team together. And those guys started to break down on that team. I feel like they made some emotional decisions. And so those teams were like a mass unit. They just were outmanned. These teams don't feel like they're outmanned. They feel like they are not prepared.
A little of both too, but I think, you've got some aging guys. I mean, Fletcher Cox is 4 years older than the Super Bowl. Jason Kelsey's 4 years older. Lane Johnson's 4 years older. That aging, I mean, that's what happens to winning teams. Just about every team except the Patriots keeps guys kind of longer than you probably should. I mean, the Patriots have been ruthless about that, letting go of favorites and stuff like that. And they continue to win. Of course, Tom Brady had a lot to do with it too. I just think it's the natural sort of, natural evolution of a championship team, right? You win the Super Bowl. The next 2 years were the years when you kind of had a chance to kind of, build on that and make another run. And then it starts to go the other way. And once it starts to slide the other way, which it's doing right now, it's very difficult to turn around. Ask the Giants, ask the Jets, ask the Washington football team.
Yeah, there's a lot of, and that's the thing. Okay, you just made the point about those teams have perpetually been bad for a long period of time. The Eagles have perpetually been good for a long period of time, and they are now starting to kind of fall apart here as the age has come in. They haven't replenished well enough. There's no question about it. But, and I think I know everybody's answers to this, is Howie Roseman the biggest problem? I mean, Mike, they have not had back-to-back losing seasons in like 20 years. So to say the GM is the biggest problem for a team that never has losing seasons is very odd, but I understand the frustration. But is he the biggest issue?
I don't think he's the biggest issue. I mean, he's the number one scapegoat. He's an easy scapegoat, right? Because of his title, and some of his draft picks haven't worked out the past couple of years. But he's not, I just think the number one issue again is the team is kind of aging out, and it's very difficult to stop, and it's very difficult to, to reverse and turn around. It's why you don't see, teams go, perpetually to the Super Bowl and stuff like that. So the Eagles, you're right. Eagles fans have kind of been spoiled since the Andy Reid era began. They haven't had 2 or 3 years in a row where they've been below 500, or they haven't been in contention for a playoff spot or been in the playoffs. That's a 20-year run. It's kind of like what the Giants did from like 86 to 2010. But, the Giants from 2010 on, haven't been very good. And the last 5 years, they've been horrible. So eventually time catches up with you.
Mike, since 1999, Andy Reid, his second year, the team has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 losing seasons since 1999. 5. And in the 5 years, they only had back-to-back losing seasons once. They went 7-9 and 7-9. Howie Roseman has been in charge for essentially all of those years. Now, it's very murky. Reid controlled a lot of the personnel decisions. Chip Kelly came in and that whole debacle. So he has been always hard to kind of evaluate for people who are rational. Most of the fans just think he makes every bad pick and that's it. But for a team from 99 to now only has 5 losing seasons, how is the GM the biggest problem?
Yeah, he's not the biggest problem. And 4 years ago, they were in the Super Bowl, right? And they won the Super Bowl, and he had a lot to do with that. So I don't think he got any dumber or in the last 4 years. It's just the natural evolution of what happens. And Eagles fans are probably spoiled that they haven't been down this road before. And again, it's not fun going down it. I've been down it the last 5 years with the Giants, like 19-51 in 5 years. It's not fun at all. But once you start down it, which they're down down it now, it's very tough to turn around. I know a lot of people point to hey, they're going to have 3 big draft choices in the top 10 next year. They could have the number 1 overall pick if the Dolphins keep playing like that, but that's no guarantee. I mean, look at the draft this year. The Jets rookie quarterback, he doesn't look great. The 49er rookie quarterback, he doesn't look great. Fields is struggling in Chicago. I remember the Giants drafted Saquon Barkley with the number 2 pick. He can't get on the field. I mean, it's tough to win in the NFL, especially when you start losing.
Well, and that's the thing is you'll say, hey, they have 3 picks. The immediate answer is, Mike, well, Roseman's making the picks. So it's it doesn't matter. You get 3 picks, no matter who is a guy that you want. I keep hearing Louis Riddick's name. Why? Because he's the guy that's on TV, right?
Yeah, I mean,
everybody wants the guy that they're familiar, but they wanted Peterson fired. This is you wanted Schwartz fired. This is what you got now. You wanted Kapler fired. You got Girardi, and Kapler won 107 games. I feel like everybody's just. You're right. The patience is amazing that this team has had the run of success for 25 years almost, or 20 years since '99. And it's irrational to think they're supposed to keep that up every single year.
And the other thing you don't want to do is you don't want to get caught on a quarterback, head coach, GM carousel where you're constantly switching those guys.
This year too, Mike, you mentioned the quarterbacks that were failures. This draft does not have that standout quarterback. So maybe you would hope that they don't just draft a quarterback just to take one.
Right, exactly. Or maybe I don't know what you could do with some of these picks. You could maybe trade 1 or 2, get your first round pick in the next year's draft or something like that. Every year you hear about great quarterbacks and stuff in the draft. The bottom line is most of them don't work out. And you don't want to get caught on the quarterback, head coach, GM, where you're switching that every 2 to 3 years. Because it's frustrating and it doesn't work. I mean, go look at the Jets. I heard you talking about Joe Douglas before. People thought he knew what he was doing when he was with Philadelphia. He goes to New York. The Jets couldn't be any more of a disaster than they are right now. And who knows what happens to them going forward. So you start getting that thing where you're switching these key positions every 2 to 3 years. Boy, that's trouble right there. You're almost trying to buy a lottery ticket and hoping, a scratch-off ticket and hope you win $1 million on.
Well, and then I guess the other thing is John Gannon has been just way over his head. He won't adjust the defense. They're getting absolute 91% completion yesterday. Now, he runs a defense that is predicated on having linebackers. They don't have linebackers. So is John Gannon not know what he is doing? Do they not have the talent?
Well, if you're running a defense predicated on linebackers and you don't have any linebackers, you can't run that defense, basically.
Well, but that's the thing. That's what you get. He got hired based on his scheme that he excels in, but they don't have the talent to run his scheme. So that's a weird situation.
And that's one of the things. You don't want to make rash judgments, right? Maybe they will have the talent to run his scheme next season or the season after that if you give him time to get to there. The other thing I would say that the only coincidence I think is everybody ripped Schwartz for not blitzing enough and not being aggressive. And now everybody's ripping Gannon for not blitzing and not being aggressive enough. Well, to me, that says maybe they don't have the players to blitz and be aggressive.
I agree with that. I said that during the whole Schwartz time. Look, they don't have guys who are blitzers. They don't have guys who that's what they're good at. Look, the Schwartz defense was good enough to get him to the playoffs multiple times, win him a Super Bowl, constantly be in play. He didn't have the players towards the end. And by the way, blitzing, by most accounts, gets you blitzed.
Right.
Most teams, if you blitz, the result is not good. Yeah, every once in a while you get that big sack, but this team does not have the talent to send the house. No way.
Especially against some of the quarterbacks they've played so far this season in Mahomes, although he has struggled this past weekend, and Brady. They have played a lot of big-time quarterbacks early on. You're not going to make a living blitzing Tom Brady, basically.
Yeah. He's Mike McGarry. Check out the Press of Atlantic City for more all week long as the Eagles get ready to play the 0-7 Lions. Oh, man, can you imagine losing to the 0-7 Lions? It's a possibility. Mac's back on Wednesday. Thank you, Mike.
All right, we'll see you later.
All right, Mike McGarry's appearance on today's show. It's brought to you by Calvi Electric, now offering residential service for your home and business online, calvielectric.com. Well, Grayson's grades are posted right now at 97.3ESPN.com. How many Fs this week? Holy mackerel. Find out next here on the Sports Bash. All right, hour 2 of the Bash, 97.3 ESPN, and what an hour 1 was. I can't wait for the comments in hour number 2. But let's get the grades. Grayson's grades are posted right now at 97.3ESPN.com. They're brought to you by Boardwalk Honda from Maine to Miami. Nobody beats a Boardwalk deal. Scott Grayson had the red pen out as the grades are posted right now at 97.3ESPN.com. Who passed? Who failed? Let's bring Scott Grayson in from Fox 29 and 97.3ESPN.com to a Monday show. What's going on, Scott?
Boy, I'll tell you what, Mike. I'm sure this has been a fun day for you. Boy, what a mess that was yesterday.
The text board is quite humorous today. The reactions on our website are quite humorous today, and you can only imagine. I'm imagining that this was an easy game to grade because most people, I would imagine, got an F from you. So let's dive right into the grades right now, and the Fs go to Nick Sirianni again. I mean, does this look like a lost cause for Nick Sirianni?
It's hard to say no to that because, quite frankly, you even heard the announcers say it on the broadcast that one team looked more inspired to play than the other, that looked more fired up to play than the other. That stems from the coaching. I mean, there's no other way to slice that. You look at what he's got on his team, and I'm just not seeing again. I'm just not. Look, they did try to run the ball more. Okay, I'll give him that. I don't know how you avoid not running it more than what they were doing.
They tried, but and it's successful. Then they got away from it.
They got away from it, yeah. And again, it was Hurts, and there's RPOs. And I will get into Hurts, but this is partly it too. From a coaching standpoint, it's got to be coached up better now. Look, you're what, 7 games into this thing. The RPOs, I feel like Hurts is keeping too much when there are better options to give to the running back. I don't know if he's reading it wrong. But you see the running back kind of shoot off into what looked like a pretty good hole. And I don't know if it's just because teams are maybe trying to bait Hurts into thinking that, they're playing it one way and attacking it another. And he's taking the bait. There's just too many runs still from him. And, there were some bad throws yesterday. And again, I know we'll get into that, but the play calling and the penalty. I mean, Mike, I know the penalty that the Raiders committed on third down. Why did you take that penalty? Why didn't you make it fourth down from, the 43? If they want to kick a 60-yard field goal, let them. You're at least getting off the field with only giving up 3.
Well, I mean, his answer was a little wonky. I mean, his answer essentially was, well, I would have gone for it there. So he's saying because he would have gone for it, therefore, 4th and 4 is a more makeable down and distance than 3rd and 14. So in his mind, he said, I would have gone for it. If I was the offensive coach, I would have gone for that. And 4th and 4 is more makeable than 3rd and 14. That was his reasoning.
So what message are you sending to your defense? If you tell them that I don't think that you can stop a 4th and 4, 4th and 3, and instead I want you to face a 3rd and 15.
Right. Well, the problem I had with that was it appeared that they had the punt unit on the field.
Yeah.
Right? Like they put their offense back out on the field after that. So that whole thing. Now, they ended up getting an interception, so that didn't really, that didn't cost them. But right after that, the offense goes 8 plays and 22 yards because they went pass. They went right back away from the run, and then Sanders gets hurt, and then they completely get away from the run. But John Gannon and his defense, they're just 91% completion percentage yesterday. Now you have Fletcher Cox coming out. After the game, Sirianni saying, well, the defense, like the coaches are starting. I mean, this just looks like a team that is just unprepared, and they seem unprepared to be a team that wasn't going to be good. It was almost like they figured, oh, we knew what we were doing. How are we not this good? Like, how are we not good? Like, they seemed unready to not be a good team.
Yeah, well, how much does week 1 look like fool's gold now? Everybody was going, hey, look at this. It worked. Everything's looking good. We got the right coach.
And to be fair, Scott, he did a good job in week number 1. Like, you got to give him credit. He did do a good job. I like to go back to your grades and see what grade you gave Sirianni for week number 1 because he did a good job in week number 1. What happened to that guy?
Honestly, I think it's the week to week of this league and how you have to come up with your game plan for the following week. I mean, it's tough. It is tough, and that's why not everybody can do it. And I'm starting to think this guy can't do it, at least from an offensive coordinator standpoint. Yesterday, he sold me on maybe he shouldn't be the head coach with some of that decision making. The onside kick in the second half, down 10-0, down by 10 points. Excuse me. Desperate. And it also, again, what message are you sending your team? I don't think it was the right one. And you want to talk about, you mentioned Gannon. I gave him an F. This defense to me is so plain and vanilla. And it's just Derek Carr just dinked and dunked and picked them apart. And then he worked over top. And the cushion, I mean, I would love to get Darius Slay and Steve Nelson in a room together with no recording devices and nothing and just ask them, do you really like playing off that much? Because I bet both of them would love to play more bump and run. And you looked at what the Raiders were doing. They played Devontae Smith bump and run pretty much the whole game, and it took him off his timing. Look early in the game, how many drops he had early on. Look, you got to be aggressive on defense and take the defense to them. Don't wait for them to make mistakes, because in the NFL, it's just not going to happen. And I'm terribly disappointed with Jonathan Gannon. I'm disappointed with Nick Sirianni. And I think, quite frankly, now, and I warned of this before this week, had they lost this week, I think the finger pointing is going to start. And now I think the table's set for them to potentially lose to Detroit.
Yeah, they play harder. Detroit plays well, and they're better prepared. That's the biggest thing, is Detroit's a more well-prepared team. Scott Grayson's grades are posted right now at 97.3 ESPN.com. He gave an F to Sirianni. He gave an F to John Gannon, and an F to Jalen Hurts. 7 games in now for Jalen Hurts. Is this a byproduct of Hurts isn't very good, he's just average, or is the coach not helping this kid out?
You know, I've been constantly staying on the, I don't think the coach is calling the best offense for him. However, there were clearly some throws available yesterday that could have been made, that were thrown behind receivers, that were low, Donovan McNabb type low. and then there's the decision-making when he gets out of the pocket. I mean, if you watch Russell Wilson, and I was thinking that Jalen Hurts could be a Russell Wilson-esque kind of guy to the standpoint of when he got out of the pocket, eyes downfield, look to pick apart a defense that's starting to get loose because they're not sure if he's going to run or not. And then you just find that guy. I'm not seeing that now out of him. Every now and then he'll take that shot at a receiver along the sideline. He hit Devontae Smith for something like that yesterday. But, I mean, I'm seeing too much running. I'm seeing some bad decision-making, and I'm starting to think that, and I think this is a great comparison. You look at Josh Allen up in Buffalo. His first year was really not good. And now he's got his team, one of the best, if not the best, in the AFC. So am I saying that Jalen Hurts is going to be Josh Allen? No, I don't think that. But, I'd really like to see him in a 4 quarters of good play calling. That would be nice to see, because there were times yesterday early on when they had the running game going that they ran a little play action and he hit a guy. Play action and he'd hit another guy. And Dallas Goedert would get open downfield. And then they get away from all of that. And I just think it's really hard to evaluate Jalen Hurts right now based on what this coach is putting out in front of him.
Grayson's grades posted now at 97.3 ESPN.com. All right, those guys got Fs. You gave Devonta Smith and Jordan Mailata Ds. Mailata had a tough day at the office, no question about it. He really had a trouble. He appeared to be limping off the field. You wonder if he's healthy there. Devonta Smith, I started the show with him as well. And Mailata. I thought Mailata had a rough day. I thought Lane Johnson had a rough day. I thought the line as a group, that was an area that is a strength of this team. Supposedly, they got whipped yesterday. But Devonta Smith, you're looking around and saying, does he stand out? Does he do anything special? He's dropping passes. He was built as a guy who had great hands. He just seems to be a good, not great talent right now.
Yeah, I would agree with that sentiment. And yesterday, he had to be a guy who was going to make some of those catches, because those drops happened early in the game when you're trying to set that tone. They went down, they got the 7 points, and then you're trying to get that offense going. And those drops were at key times, and they hurt. And you've got, look, you're as high a draft pick as he is. You've got to produce right away. You're a Heisman Trophy winner. Everybody's expecting you to be that guy. Now, look, everybody has a bad day every now and then, and I guess you should be entitled to maybe have one. The key is, how's he going to bounce back from that? I've seen things I like out of the kid. I like his route running, but like I said, his route running is his strength. Credit the Raiders. They took that away from him by getting him off his timing with his quarterback, by bumping him and checking him right at the line of scrimmage. And that's the kind of stuff, again, I would love to see from the Eagles corners. But so now the question is the blueprint out there on how you can get Devontae Smith rattled? You get him chucked off the line. Jordan Mailata, here's the thing. Did he go to school yesterday? What will he learn from yesterday? Because I think Yannick Ngakoue really exposed him to some things. And the question is, in this league, okay, you can't let it happen multiple times. So Ngakoue got him several times, beat him off the line, whatever he did with his feet, he was getting beat, and he didn't compensate well. So what did he learn yesterday? That's what I want to see out of Mailata. And I like the guy. I think he is look how far he's come already. His learning curve has been great. I'd like to think he'll learn a lot from what happened yesterday.
Well, and you're hoping, and Jeff Stoutland's one of the best offensive line coaches in the league. So you're hoping that he's going to have some bumps in the road. I thought yesterday he really struggled with just a speed rush right past him. He just seemed that he could not keep up with it yesterday. But that has not been a problem for him in the past. That's why I'm not saying, oh man, this guy just doesn't seem he seems overmatched. But Smith, I'd like to see some more of. On the positive side, you gave Goddard a B. He had 3 catches in the game yesterday for 70 yards. I mean, he had big plays, over 23 yards a catch yesterday. Just not enough opportunities for him. They need to feature Goddard. He needs to be like a Kittle. He needs to be like a Kelsey. He is the best weapon this offense has.
Yeah, especially with Ertz out of the way now. There's certainly, look, there were 11 receptions going to tight ends in previous games when you combine him and Ertz. You'd like to think now that opportunity is there for Goddard, and it should be exposed. It is a strength. It is a weapon. He is a guy who can tack on yards after the catch, as we've seen. He had a good game yesterday. I gave him a B, quite frankly, because, I wanted to see more of him, and that's not his fault. That's either on Hurts not getting him the ball if it was opportunities were there, or on Sirianni not calling more opportunities for Goddard to get his hands on it, because I really do think he is a weapon. He's, in my opinion, he's kind of entering his prime right now. He seems like he's kind of gotten around understanding what the NFL is like. He's had pretty high value games in the past. And so, I think Goddard certainly needs to be getting 6-7 touches a game, if not more, if it's there against some of these weaker teams over the middle. Goddard, to me, you're right. And I gave him a B, like I said, because I want to see more, just like I've been saying for Miles Sanders. And boy, it looked like Miles Sanders was primed to maybe have a game yesterday, and that Sirianni was going to let him try to. And then the injury that came up with him. And that's why I didn't grade Sanders. But look, Goddard has to be featured. There's no two ways about it. And if I'm Hurts, I am going Goddard inside, and I'm working outside to Devontae Smith, back inside to Goddard, maybe hitting Quez Watkins. And
Scott, the first drive of the game worked.
Right.
The first drive worked. They turned around. They handed it off. They ran successfully. They ran play action and hit their tight end for 23 yards. It worked. And then they just went right back to what has been absolutely amateur the rest of the season. They went right back to everything, reverted right back to everything that hasn't worked all season long. It was criminal that drive went right down the field. They were under center. Did they go under center the rest of the day after that?
3rd and goal, the bad snap, right? We haven't talked about that yet, that Hurts dropped. That 3rd and goal from inside, I think the ball was even nosed inside the 1. And I've, all around the league, it's the way they're kind of doing things. Nobody gets under center much anymore. Why not? Are you telling me, under center, you're a lot more, they have to worry about him taking a QB sneak. Even if you don't do that, you can run a rollout, you can get him out in the open, but they have to at least pay attention to it. When you're backed up like that in the shotgun, you're giving them 4 or 5 yards automatically to come get you and keep you, if he has to run, from getting in there. It's stupid. I don't understand it. And I know Sirianni's not the only coach doing it. But look, you had a bad snap. You had a bad exchange. You lost the ball there. Points off the board, which this team has done way too many times.
Yeah, and I know that, there's stuff coming in from both sides here. The offense unprepared. They got away from what worked. They scored. They went down the field, had a great drive, got away from it. And then the defense has been just overwhelmed in 4 games right now, 5 games, really 4 games. The 49er game, you wouldn't say they were overwhelmed. They gave up. The whole philosophy of the defense, just to paint the picture for the people, is we don't want to give up big plays, longer drives. The longer the drive is, the more possibilities that you will make a mistake. That happened. They got an interception. The problem is it doesn't happen enough. They don't tackle well enough, and these long drives are resulting in touchdowns.
Right. The to kind of finish your philosophy there is when you get back in the red zone, then there's less space to work with. It's easier to defend. You keep them out of the end zone, but they're not doing that. And quite frankly, I thought about this, Mike, and I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on this. Last year, do you think Doug Peterson had more or less talent than Nick Sirianni, or say over the last 2 years, compared to what Nick Sirianni has on this team right now? Because frankly, I feel like Sirianni's offense has more talent and is producing less.
Yeah, so I would agree. And I brought the where on the offensive side of the ball are you saying, man, we are just like on defense, you can say our linebackers are just not NFL caliber. Where on offense are you saying, I bet you 90% of the league teams in this league would call the Eagles and say, we would take your offensive line. We will take your – they have one of the best units. Now, they played terrible yesterday, I thought, as a unit. But overall, they've got one of the best offensive lines in the league. They've
I agree.
got one of the best tight ends if they utilize them. People like Sanders. So, offensively, I said this earlier, Scott. Peterson's teams the last couple of years, you didn't feel were unprepared. You felt they were outmanned. The injuries were just – crippling. They just had injury after injury after injury. And this team has dealt with some injury problems too, but nothing like the previous couple of years. These teams of the past 3 years seemed outmanned. This team this year seems unprepared.
I think that's a great word. I completely agree. I think they look uninspired at times. I think they look, once they go down.
Real quick on the uninspired, the defense has a look in their face of, we don't have an answer. Like, we do not have an answer. And I thought Joyner brought up an interesting point last night on the post game when he said, look, Fletcher Cox knows the guy behind him is inadequate. So he is trying to compensate for the inadequacies of the guy behind him, which is now causing him to be out of position.
Yeah, and look, you're going to reach a point real soon where guys start making business decisions, right? And they know that they're inadequate behind them. They know that they don't want to go and get hurt. A guy like Fletcher Cox or Hargrave or things like that. This season's quickly getting away from them. At 2-5 now, with the Cowboys doing what they're doing and the good teams there are in the NFC. Like, really? I mean, you can't even if you were able to turn this thing around. You're already digging yourself such a big hole that that's why I got to believe there's finger pointing going on now, starting, and that there's potentially, if this team comes out flat and tight, which I have no reason to doubt that they're going to do anything different against.
Well, that's an interesting point. That's an interesting point, Scott. They played Detroit, who's 0-7. This week here is really the make or break which way this season starts to go. You lose to Detroit 0-7, you fall to 2-6. The wheels fall off. It really gets bad. But realistically, if they were to win, and their schedule is, they're playing some dogs coming up here. But I'm not sitting here telling you I think they're going to turn the corner. But my point is, if you beat the Lions, they're really only a game behind the two teams that have the playoff spots right now. One of the teams in front of you, Atlanta, you've already beaten. So for whatever reason, if you end up tied with them, you've already beaten that team. Carolina's in front of you. You've already beaten them. So they're 3-4. So a win on Detroit keeps you right in pace with all of these, because the NFC has 5 really good teams. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. They all are having the same conversation we're having right now.
So I'll flip you there and I'll say, if the Eagles are able to do that, you're likely drawing a Tampa.
They got no shot.
Right. And now you've hurt the ability with your draft picks. Imagine if they lose to Detroit, suddenly that Miami pick likely becomes a 1 overall. And now you've lost again. So now you're moving up potentially they could be looking at 2 almost top 5 picks in the first round. Now, this is the horrible year to try to get into this position, because I don't know if there's a quarterback coming out of college you can try to get at this point that you can point the finger at and say, yep, that's the guy, sure. And I don't know who else you're really trading for. Deshaun Watson doesn't seem to be much in there, looking like he's in their wheelhouse anymore. So I don't know what you're doing at quarterback at this point. And That's really what needs to be figured out. Now, if they can do that, turn the corner, and you finish the season strong, and you can at least say, okay, we got into the playoffs. Jalen Hurts got a playoff start. He's our guy, and we can take these 3 first-round picks, and we can do something with them to support him some way. Great. Yeah, I'm all for that. But if you're going to, if you're still going to come out of the year going, we don't know who our quarterback is, but we got into the playoffs and we're looking at number 20 pick. And yeah, okay. I mean, I'd rather see them at this point, get some really high draft picks, get the future figured out in some way, get younger and talented. Look how it worked out. I keep using Dallas as an example. Micah Parsons and Diggs on defense. Boom. Change their defense dramatically.
Well, and I said, look, Dallas hasn't been good in 30 years. The fruits of not being a very good team is starting to kind of, they've had pick after pick after pick after pick after pick. They're all starting to, Dallas, quite frankly, hasn't been a good team, right? I mean, they haven't been a very good team, so they've had a lot of first-round picks. The Eagles, conversely, they were a good team. So what happens when you're a good team? They win the Super Bowl. You have the last pick in the round. You make the playoffs. You end up falling, deeper into the draft in a year where you won the division when you really had some issues, right?
Right.
So and look, there's no secret that they have missed on some of these picks as well. You take Rieger. He has not worked out very well. Like, he is what he is. He's a guy you have to scheme for. He's not a guy that's going to be a playmaker all by himself. You have to scheme for Reagor to be a impact player. Smith, jury's out.
Andre Dillard.
JJ Arcega-Whiteside, obviously, he's a second-round pick. You had options. Look, the whole DK Metcalf, everybody passed on him, not once but twice. I mean, everybody passed on him. He had medical red flag. They thought he would never even play, and he's been unbelievable. Dillard, you're right. Dillard's another one. You trade up for Dillard. I mean, he's been okay when he's gotten a chance to play. And by the way, apparently their team's calling about Dillard, but he hasn't been.
What about Derek Barnett? I mean, that's another one.
Derek Barnett, another one. Barnett has been horrible. That guy, if you asked him to spell the word contain, he wouldn't even know what the hell that the word existed. Horrible. He's so bad.
And that's where you look at all these drafts. Like, the flip side of my argument is, okay, great. How he's going to get, 2 top 5 picks or potentially 3 top 10 or 3 top 15, whatever. Well, do you have a lot of faith he's going to do the right thing with them? And then you got
yes and no. Look, the whole Roseman thing, I get it. He's an easy target. People don't like him. I don't know. Did he draft Lane Johnson?
Yeah.
All right.
Or was that Andy?
Well, Andy wasn't here. That was Chip's.
Oh, that's right. Andy had left.
That was Chip's first year.
Yep.
So did he draft? I don't know. When Andy was here, who was drafting? Like, who drafted Brandon Graham? Who drafted Fletcher Cox? Who drafted Zach Ertz? I mean, I think it was Roseman. Who drafted Goddard? I like Goddard. Who drafted Lane Johnson? Who drafted Jason Kelsey? Who got Brandon Brooks? I like those guys.
Well, and Devontae Smith at this point, obviously the jury is still out on, but you'd like to think he shows to me like he's got the talent. I just don't see them. Again, it comes back to the play calling. It's chicken and egg stuff. Which one's came?
I mean, look at yesterday. One game for Zach Ertz. He catches the ball, and he has a 46-yard touchdown. There's nobody near him. Now, I get it. They have DeAndre Hopkins. They got A.J. Green. You don't have to put as much. But it feels like even in his best years, he had a nickname of No Yak Zach because he would catch the ball with somebody draped all over him. Yesterday, he's wide open, running 46 yards. He must be like, oh, man, this is pretty amazing. There's nobody near me.
Yeah, it's crazy because I'm sure everybody else out there, you went through a range of emotions when you saw that highlight, right? Like, you kind of went, oh my God, I can't believe now we don't have that. You went to, oh wow, I'm happy for him, and then you hear like that's his longest catch of his career, I believe. It's like, wow. I mean, the longest touchdown catch at least. It's like, wow. I mean, that's crazy in his first game in Arizona, and that's what happened. And you're right, and it's not to be overlooked, Mike. All those weapons around him. The Eagles just never really did that around him at the receiver position. Don't give me Alshon Jeffrey. In 2017, it kind of worked a little bit. At least you had Alshon, you had Nelson. That's the year he decided to catch the ball. And, you had some other receivers that played roles, and it worked. But you talk about the weapons they have there. And if the Eagles would ever put that much attention into some of their receiver positions. And now you have basically you're going through the same thing. History is sort of repeating itself. Goddard is where Zach Ertz was when he was younger. And what are you going to do this time? Are you going to do the same thing? Or are you going to do something different and put some weapons around him so that he has the ability to work in space like that?
By the way, it looks like Miles Sanders is going to be out 2 to 3 weeks. So there's going to be another issue because, I don't know, once he left the game yesterday, it appeared that the intent to run the ball went completely out the window. So that's from Derek Gunn, 2 to 3 weeks, no broken ankle. But look, this team has a lot of issues. That being said, they won the Super Bowl. They got old. I think they made a lot of emotional decisions after the Super Bowl to keep guys, extend guys that were a part of that team, Alshon Jeffrey. And then the Wentz thing. I mean, Wentz looks like a player right now with the Colts. He doesn't appear to be an issue for them. So you wonder what role does the knee-jerk reaction after every single game come into play that Wentz says, I don't want this nonsense. Get me out of here. And then he goes someplace else, and he seems to be fine.
Well, you look at it too, and what the more that you know the examples you just laid out in just a couple of seconds, how much does it look like the Eagles have egg on their face through all of this? What's happened with Wentz? What's happened with Ertz? Just in one game, having that kind of space to operate. You talked about the bad contracts they extended after the Super Bowl. All of this, I mean, they just look like a dysfunctional organization that people have suspected, and it's starting to now, really come true fruition. And the question now is what is Jeffrey Lurie? I would love to know what he's thinking through these first 7 games. You made a hire. You wanted a piece that you could control. Okay, congratulations. Nick Sirianni's that guy. He's running what you want him to run, it appears. You're drafting and telling him what players he's going to get. Remember some of the press conferences when people asked about the 53-man roster, who has control over that? Oh, Howie does, and it's probably Howie, and I'll just and then I'll have control over who gets is active or inactive, and the successful coaches in this league are the ones who are given carte blanche to run their way. And I'm not saying like Chip Kelly power here, but in terms of game day, they control the roster. They get to control who's active and inactive, and they run the offense the way they want to run it. And if it sucks, they pay the price. Done. But, I think Sirianni's trying to please the boss in Jeffrey Lurie, and Howie Roseman is trying to please the boss and put the pieces in place that Lurie wants. And
I agree.
It's just not working. And the question is, how far into a hole are you going to drive yourself before you can finally get out of it?
I agree. I people are texting in about the fact that Roseman this. Look, I don't love Roseman. Look, the guy was the GM of a team that won the Super Bowl not too long ago.
But why? Why? Because he had a football guy in Joe Douglas who helped him with some of those decisions.
Are we sure Joe Douglas isn't doing so well with the Jets?
No, I understand that. But when it was here, they worked together well. Howie structured the contracts, and Joe really went about, working with getting the guys here that they needed. I need this type of player.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Joe Douglas would say, I got this guy, this guy, this guy. Howie, go get one of them. And Howie would go work the numbers, and boom, he'd come back. That's Howie's specialty. And he needs to stay on that side of the line, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, I agree with that. Like, they need to have somebody in here, I think, kind of hand in hand with him, because to lose what he does well, I think, is an asset that you don't want to walk out the door. The problem is you need someone to he almost has too much reign. But the other issue, as you mentioned, is he knows how to placate to the owner. All of these, like I say, Roseman is like Sam Bradford, well, he's hurt. He always keeps getting hurt, but when he plays, he's been okay, but then he got hurt again. It's hard to figure out that he switched offenses. He had a new offensive coordinator like every single year. He never had the same offense. Roseman's in the same, was it Reed? Was it Roseman? Was it Kelly? Was it Roseman? Who's making the picks? We don't know. Is it Douglas? Is it He's the one constant who's been here, good, bad, indifferent, right? But I said this earlier, Scott. Since 1999, he has been here. And since 1999, they have 5 losing seasons. 5. And we're acting like this team.
6.
Right? Well, yeah, they're going to have 6. This will be, Scott, the first time. This will be the second time in the entire 20-year span that they've had back-to-back losing seasons. How many organizations can say that? So I feel like we act like, oh my God, this team is so bad all the time. And it's just not the case. It's irrational to think that this team can be competitive for 20 straight years. That's your issue. We want to be competitive for 20 straight years, and that's irrational.
I completely agree. But I think Andy Reid was good enough. We're seeing it with well, not in current day Kansas City, but just in the recent past.
And the problems that Kansas City has are same problems. They don't stress linebackers. They don't value the linebacker. That's Andy Reid. And Philadelphia kept the Andy Reid philosophy of we don't value linebackers. Andy taught us that, and we're sticking with that. Well, this is what you're getting.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. But I think Andy had enough pieces around him, and he got lucky on some linebackers who outperformed. And I think you could say that the expectation that they had when they came in, and that helped immensely. And you look at the future, and yeah, Mike, you're right. Howie has a skill set, and he has to stay in his lane.
Yeah.
And when he's asked and when he's given the ability to veer out of that lane, I feel like is when things start going a little bit awry. No, should they be competitive and have winning years, 20 years in a row? That is unrealistic, but we're not used to seeing this kind of disarray. And quite frankly, you feel, in my opinion, it feels like they're further away from the playoffs than they are close to it.
Yeah, well, I it's hard because, again, the fans wanted Peterson gone. He was gone. They wanted Schwartz gone. He's gone. They wanted Wentz traded. They listened to everything the fans asked for the most part. They fired all of these guys, and it hasn't worked. That tells me that this team needs to kind of take a year or two to step back. The problem was the years after the Super Bowl, they made the playoffs in years they probably shouldn't have because the other teams were so bad. Right? Dallas was so poorly run. The Giants were so poorly run. Washington is so poorly run that you're sneaking into the playoffs in years that you needed to kind of take your step back to help replenish the pot. Well, the Eagles have not been in the top part of the draft to get those impact players. They keep drafting in the middle, and it's harder to hit there.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've seen that, and we've talked about plenty of examples where that happened. And that's what I completely agree with you in that sentiment that they probably shouldn't have made the playoffs those years, but they came close to going on runs. I mean, the drop pass in New Orleans, they got hot at the right time, and that's what happened with those.
Just to answer this thing for Kyle, who's watching on the YouTube, I'm not blaming the fans. I'm saying the fans asked for these guys to be fired or traded, and the team listened, and it didn't work. They traded Wentz. Nobody wanted Wentz back. Wentz was Ben Simmons. Get him out of here. They got rid of Wentz. They did what you asked, and now you have a quarterback that's not as good as Carson Wentz. I'm sorry.
They did what the fans wanted, but the question, Mike, is I don't know that what they did after that, hiring this group of coaches was what – I mean, I don't think there's any fans that would tell you this is what they wanted to get brought in. A lot of guys – I mean, you heard the hire. It's like, Nick who? And then you expected them to do what they did for Peterson and say, well, we're going to give a veteran coach on the defensive side of the ball just to be there like Schwartz was for Peterson and, help you with some of the head coaching stuff. I've been here. This is what I've done. And they went totally fresh. They went totally fresh.
And they didn't fire Schwartz. His contract ran out, but let's be honest. They were not interested in bringing Jim Schwartz back.
No, and honestly, like you said, at this point, I would love to see Schwartz back with these guys instead of what we're watching right now.
I was not a Schwartz hater. I said, first off, Schwartz should be given credit for doing what he did with what he had. I mean, he had no talent. He was playing with Cravon LeBlanc, and mean, some of these guys were terrible. Now he actually has they actually have a real secondary right now. Those guys are decent. He's got decent guys.
They're using them like they don't, leaving them 8 to 10 yards off the receiver. It's like, trust these guys.
Say to these guys, Slay, Nelson, you're my two veterans. I need to ask more from you this week. I'm sorry you might get beat once over the top, but I need to ask more from you because I have to send more guys. So I need more from you. I'm sure they would say, Coach, go for it.
Yeah. I would think so, too. I mean, these are veteran players who trust their skills, and Slay loves being able to point out how he locked down guys after games are over. But when you're 8 to 10 yards off of them, you can't lock down anything but air. And I just don't understand the philosophy.
All right, Scott, I went way too long, but it was a good conversation. We've got a ton of reaction coming in here. Check out Grayson's grades after every Eagles game. Eagles-Lions next Sunday right here on 97.3 ESPN. All right, Scott, thanks, man.
All right, you got it, Mike. Take care.
That was good. Good back and forth with Scott Grayson. Check him out on Fox 29, Props and Locks, and, of course, on Grayson's Grades right here on 97.3 ESPN. You also hear him on Sundays in the locker room with Billy Schwein. I'm Mike Gill. Coming back, more of your reaction. I got text messages. We might have a record number of text messages right now. And I'm going to try to read off as many as I can and react. Geoff Mosher, football at 4. Casey Joyner, one thought every game. I'm Mike Gill. All right, 346 Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. I'm Mike Gill. This hour brought to you by Jersey Shore Federal Credit Union. Visit jerseyshorefcu.org for more info. I got a ton of texts, a ton of video messages, and if you're listening on the app, I've got some messages over there that I want to get to as well. This one is on the free mobile app. It's from Cole in Atlantic City. Mike, the defense has given up one or more 90-yard drives in every game since week 2. Are you kidding me? Gannon does nothing to help his guys. I didn't say he's doing anything to help his guys. What are you talking about? I think Gannon has been terrible. Obviously, the linebackers can't do this. Our lack of talent at safety only magnified this. I said 3 weeks ago they were going to revolt against Gannon, and here it comes. I've also been steadfast in saying that, yes, Hurts absolutely is holding the offense back, and the rookie coach doesn't help the situation. But if you have a quarterback that doesn't understand what you're trying to do, you're going to be in trouble. Side note, I thought firing Doug to bring Jeffrey and Howie a yes man was appalling. Trading Wentz only works if you package the pick for Watson. Otherwise, it's a travesty. This is what it looks like when your owner is involved in actual football decisions. We become a poor man's Dallas Cowboys. Let that sink in. Well, Dallas has actually turned some things around. I mean, you got to give them credit. They've done a good job at look, I agree. Dallas was for 30 years just a mediocre team, and they have kind of dug their way out of mediocrity. It took them 30 years, but they have dug their way out of mediocrity. And they've done that through, you hit on some draft choices. One of the reasons why Dallas was in mediocrity is because they didn't do a good job drafting, and they didn't do a good job in finding free agents and managing their cap. The defense has given up 90 points. I don't know what you're talking about with me. I don't think Gannon's doing a good job at all. The only question I asked is the scheme that he was hired to bring in, he does not have the right talent for. That's obvious. You cannot run cover 2 with this group of linebackers. You just can't do it. So, Cole, I don't know if you heard me wrong or did something wrong. I am not supporting Gannon at all at this point. I think he's in over his head. Now, the question is, he's in over his head with this team. If they brought in better safeties, better linebackers, I don't know, is his system scheme better? A lot of teams run cover 2. Buffalo runs cover 2. Their defense is pretty good. The Eagles just don't have they are deficient at linebacker. They are deficient at safety. I think their safeties are just average. Rodney McLeod is a good player. He's not great. And Anthony Harris, who didn't play yesterday, he's just an average player. When you have to, when Harris leaves, you had Epps in the game yesterday, you're going to a below average player. Their linebackers are both below average. Those two areas, safety and linebacker, where cover 2 is the most important positions. They are very average at safety, and they are below average at linebacker. The problem is that's what John Gannon runs. So now you hire a guy, and then you say, well, we hired you, but we don't want you to run what we hired you for. It's a tough thing to do. 609-403-0973, 609-403-0973. There's so many text messages here. I don't even know where to start with some of these text messages. Right? I don't know where to start with some of these messages. People are just all over the place. Over on our website, 973ESPN.com. Dave Weinberg asks, who is to blame for the team's troubles? And he says it's the coaches. If you ask me right now, why is this team 2-5? My answer would be they are not prepared. Now, do I expect it to be better than 2-5? Not necessarily. There's not a game they lost I thought they'd win, really. Like, I'm not surprised they lost to Vegas. Did I think they could beat Vegas? Yeah, they didn't. There's not a game that they lost that you thought they should win. Those games are coming up where you're like, okay, they should beat Detroit. All right, they should probably beat the Jets. They should probably beat the Giants. They can beat Washington. The teams that they've played 2-5, they pretty much went how you thought they would go. The problem is how they're losing those games. Right? It's how they're losing those games. They are losing the games and they're lopsided. They're not competitive. They don't look prepared. They're running a cover 2 with no linebackers. I mean, it's criminal. They're asking their 2 corners who are probably, I would say Slay is a good player right now. He's very good. He wouldn't be a great player. Steven Nelson's just average. But those 2 guys, you need to ask more from them. You would just keep babying those 2 guys almost. Hey, don't let anything go over the top of you. Just keep everything in front. The problem is you're asking them to keep everything in front. They don't tackle well. They don't get off blocks. And then at the time when the other team senses that you're trying to kind of cheat a little bit, they just run the ball right down your throat. The Eagles just cannot stop the run. Both of their defensive tackles are cheating because the 2 linebackers behind them, they don't believe in those 2 guys at all. It is just a recipe for an absolute disaster. So you're running cover 2 with no linebackers. I mean, come on. How do you expect to compete right now with that? Now, the question is, how were they competitive against Carolina? How were they competitive against Atlanta? How were they competitive against the 49ers running that similar style of defense? Because they were. Well, those guys, Matt Ryan, first game of the year, maybe he's not really comfortable with what he's got. By the way, Kyle Pitts is pretty darn good. Right? I had some knucklehead texting me a while back about, oh, what about your boy Kyle Pitts? Yeah, I take Kyle Pitts. Thanks for playing. Kyle Pitts is pretty good. He's better than any offensive weapon this team has. Mike, how was it we asked about Wentz being traded? Wentz didn't want to play here anymore. Well, he didn't want to play here because people didn't want him here. That's why Wentz didn't want to play here. Wentz didn't want to play here because nobody wanted him. People were killing him. 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. I mean, look, John Gannon to me has been in over his head. Sirianni's in over his head. I think the 2 guys are starting to separate. I think there's a divide starting between the 2 coaches all of a sudden. Sirianni's like, look, I got a chance to be a head coach, which I didn't deserve. I brought you in here, and this is what you're giving me, dude? Like, I gave you a chance to be a defensive coordinator, and this is what I'm getting from you? Like, I can't imagine the conversations that are going on between those 2 guys at this point. And I got to imagine that there is a divide and a split between those 2 guys, and now you're going to start to get a divide and a split between both the defensive players and the coaching staff. And I got to think you have an advanced offensive line. You have a veteran offensive line. Sports Bash Live 97.3 ESPN. 609-403-0973. All right, Mosher's on the other side, football at 4. What are some of the issues? Well, he's got them down right now at InsideTheBirds.com. They discussed it on the latest podcast. We'll get into a bunch of the issues that happened. They have 10 weeks to change it. Is Sirianni being evaluated over these next 10 weeks? We'll get into that and so much more here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. Download the app in the Apple Store or Google Play. It's free, thanks to First Bank of Sea Isle City. This hour brought to you by Jersey Shore Federal Credit Union. All right, Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, and it is brought to you by Caesars Entertainment Group of Atlantic City. Come experience the ultimate sports destination all season long. Wild Wild West, Tropicana Harrah's Resort, Atlantic City. Book your game day experience today, Caesars.com. Geoff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast is here. And as you can imagine, Geoff Mosher, people are not very happy. Would that have been your prediction today?
Yes, that would have been my prediction. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, we had a team yesterday that, really, of all the losses, there was some of them where they, Tampa Bay, you're just not as good as that team, obviously. Kansas City's a weird situation because they're all of a sudden not looking like the same team they've been. Dallas looks like a really good team. This was the first team that you've played that you're like, okay, these are similar talent bases. They might be a little bit better. They're at home. That looked like a Super Bowl team next to you yesterday, which then brings out, is this team just in over its head as a 53-man unit, head coach, defensive coordinator, as an organization? Are they in over their heads?
That's tough to ask if they're in over their heads. So I'll attack it in two ways. First, from a coaching staff question, I do think it's pretty glaring that this staff lacks a lot of experience. Some of the assistants, like Nick Rallis, for example, the linebackers coach, and we've talked about how linebacker play has really hurt them this year. The guy's 27 years old. He's the same age as Alex Smith, and the most he's ever done is being an assistant linebackers coach with the Vikings, right? So he's never even led a room until this year. Now he's being asked to lead a room where some of the guys are his same age. Tracy Rocker, defensive line coach, has coached in college for years, a long time, but never at the NFL level. The two play callers, obviously Nick Sirianni and Jonathan Gannon, are doing it for the first time. One thing Adam and I talked about on Inside the Birds a lot in the offseason was they should probably have brought in some kind of senior assistant, somebody who has been a head coach before. You see a lot of first-time head coaches who are play callers for the first time do that. They bring in senior assistants, somebody who just like a sage voice in their ear to kind of help them through times of adversity. And this staff lacks that on both offense and defense. You could say Jeff Stoutland's a sage voice, but he's never been a head coach before. Denard Wilson has been coaching in the NFL as a defensive backs coach, but never a defensive coordinator.
Well, I would say this then, Rich Biacchi, he's never been a head coach before. They look like a well-oiled machine. Now, they've got a couple of veteran coaches on their staff that have been Gus Bradley, Tom Cable, Marinelli. So they have some, what you're talking about, but, the guy coaching yesterday.
He's surrounded by people who have had pretty prominent positions in the NFL. Yeah. And really, he's, as a special teams coordinator, he's letting them do those jobs. We know that he's not calling the plays on offense or defense. So that's a big difference.
Right. And the comment that Sirianni made yesterday, where I don't get to watch the defense, I'm watching the offense. He sounds like a coordinator. He doesn't sound like a head coach. He sounds like, hey, I'm the play caller. I'm not watching what the defense. That to me shows he doesn't have his ducks in a row on how this head coaching game works.
Right. Now, I'd be willing to bet that Doug Peterson did not do a whole lot of offensive watching game tape either, but he had Jim Schwartz, who had been a defensive coordinator and a head coach and had many years and a track record of success doing so. So I do think in that element, Mike, they're missing a whole lot of experience, especially to guide themselves through this time of adversity. And the other thing I would say is that I think it's kind of the under-discussed angle today as I hear all the vitriol, and it's warranted. But what happened in the offseason? Like when you hire these guys, right, they tell you, they sit down with you and say, Howie, you're our top personnel guy. Here's what we want to do offensively. And it's really nice to say we don't have a scheme. We'll just cater to our personnel. But clearly they have things they want to do. Nick Sirianni is a West Coast offensive guy background. Of course, he's going to cater to Jalen Hurts like he's doing now. But John Gannon is going to play, at least he's got to tell Howie, I want to play a lot of two shell. This is my philosophy. I want to keep everything in front of me, right? And in order to do that, I'm going to need to be able to be a little stout against the run. So I'm going to need personnel that's good against the run. I'm going to need a bigger lineman. I'm going to need some bigger linebackers. And yet Howie went in and did not get those kind of guys. He got guys who are familiar with the scheme, but not necessarily fitting what Jonathan Gannon wants to do and what they need from the scheme.
Well,
so
on that same note, though, and you've been around this team for a while, Geoff. Didn't Jim Schwartz want better linebackers?
Yes, he did want better linebackers, and he had them earlier in his career when he had Nigel Bradham. You know, they went out and got Nigel Bradham, who he had coached, right? And that was important. And they already had Jordan Hicks, who they drafted in the 3rd round, and that was important. The guy that they got from Minnesota, Eric Wilson, was a backup who got, earned his starting role through playing through injuries, I guess. But he was a coverage linebacker there. He was not an Eric Kendricks or Anthony Barr type of linebacker. And so they're really hurting at that spot. And of course, Davion Taylor is a coverage linebacker, not a thumper. And he's just getting his feet wet in coverage and not so great at that right now altogether. So they're really hurting from that.
Well, okay. So that brings up an interesting point. Okay. This is your personnel. Do you hire a coach to fit your personnel, or do you hire a coach that you like his ideas? I mean, obviously Gannon's defensive system does not match the personnel that you've been drafting here. So
that is accurate, right?
What is the reason of bringing it like, oh, he's a bright defensive young mind? We don't. Well, then you've essentially just wiped out a couple draft classes worth of guys that you deem that you like. Davion Taylor, right? You liked him. And I guess there's no other linebackers to say that. Sean Bradley.
Sean Bradley, right now.
You brought a coach in who doesn't fit the personnel you have.
Well, that's true. And the strange thing is, and you go back to that draft where Tom Donahoe looked pretty ticked off that the defensive tackle who weighs 330 pounds was left on the board to take the defensive tackle and Milton Williams, who's more of a explosive,
hybrid,
quick area. Right. Is that really what is going to be needed in Jonathan Gannon's scheme? I don't know. We'll see how they address it going forward. But I will agree with this point where you can't just put it all on front office. Jonathan Gannon says, I don't have a scheme. I adapt to my players. I try to put them in the best positions to succeed. I think we've seen through 7 weeks that that's not happening. So that's on him. If he's smart, like you just said, if you're an ideas guy, you know how to put players in position to succeed.
Right. But okay, so you bring this guy in who runs a certain defense. Then you give him talent that doesn't fit his defense. Is he then supposed to change? Okay, you're saying, well, then he needs to change what he does. But then why would you bring a guy in who's changing to a defense that really isn't his strong suit?
Right. And then on top of that, I'm only through three drives here, rewatching the game. And I noticed that on 1st and 2nd down, Jonathan did bring safety into the box. He did play bigger fronts, 5-man fronts with 2 linebackers, so 7-man fronts. And they were still either giving up running yards, or when you do that, of course, the offense is going to adjust, right? So how many times did you see Derek Carr come out there under center, 2 tight ends looking like they were going to run, and then they rolled him out right or left, and he was able to hit Hunter Renfrow? I mean, he abused Hunter Renfrow, and then the other kid, the guy filling in for Waller, Foster Moreau, on 5 to 10 yard passes, because he's good enough and smart enough and to execute that. And it was a great game plan by Olsen and executed well by him. But that shows you also that you can take the scheme and question all you want, but the Eagles are not that talented. I've tried to tell people this a million times on defense. I said they got Darius Slay, who's a Pro Bowler. They got Fletcher Cox, who in the right scheme I think is still a decent player. But after that, they got a bunch of steady eddies. And when you face quarterbacks in this league who are prepared, they're going to pick you apart.
There's no question about it. So I guess the question, so what are the Eagles running right now? What are they running? And like you just said, like, okay, you have certain talent. They're running a defense that doesn't fit the talent they have. But if they ran the right defense for that talent, would they be more competitive?
I don't know. I think it's a great question. I think you obviously have to do something differently, right? I mean, really the question is not as much to me as the are you playing 1 safety deep or 2 safety deeps? It's more, are you putting any pressure on the quarterback? Are you forcing the issue? Are you blitzing at all? We criticize Jim Schwartz for not blitzing, right? And here you have a guy who's probably blitzes even less than Jim Schwartz. But we also know that whenever Jim Schwartz did blitz, right, what was the result usually? That he was getting beaten badly. Now, to be fair, though, Jim didn't have for very long. He only had 1 year, Darius Slay. And I would probably tell you that Slay and Steven Nelson is probably their best combo of corners that they've had in a little while. So you might want to try to blitz a little bit more, because now you can say, at least I have guys who can hold up on the perimeter.
To that point there, like, I don't think this is a Super Bowl team. I'm not even sure that they're a playoff roster. But the teams that Peterson and Schwartz had were just riddled with injury issues. I mean, Schwartz is playing LeBlanc and,
Yep.
Roby Coleman.
Hawkins.
They have more talent right now. They have more talent than the last 3 years that Schwartz and Peterson had. Do they not?
They do, and that's why I think it's fair to move the conversation. It can't just be all on the personnel and all on the talent. At some point, you have to recognize that while this team, I agree with you, while it's not a great defense, if you look, they've got veteran corners, veteran safeties, and veteran defensive linemen. They should be better than what they are. They should be more competitive than what they are. You're right. Is this team collectively or this defense collectively good enough to be top 10 and help this team make the playoffs? I question that. There's a difference between elite talent and veteran presence. They don't have elite talent, but they've got enough veterans who should be able to execute some basic fundamental blitzes and schemes. And right now, they're just a team without an identity, and it's like 11 guys out there, and they're not doing particularly anything well. And as you heard from some of the players, they don't even really like the scheme and the play calling that's going on right now.
Right. Now, let's get into that, because what Fletcher Cox said a bunch of stuff yesterday. One, I'm not paid to run down screens. I'm paid to sack the quarterback. I mean, that's an indirect way of saying whatever defense we're running, they're not they're not using me the right way. So now at 2-5, look, to me, Moshe, this game against the Lions is a huge game for the organization. If they win, are they going to the playoffs? Maybe not. But if you lose to the Lions, right, the divide and the split, I think, will really come out.
Yeah, I mean, I felt that way a little bit about the Raiders, even though I acknowledge the Raiders is a way better team than the Lions. I just felt like we can't keep making the same excuses. Oh, you're facing Kansas City. Oh, you're facing Tampa Bay. Oh, you're facing a Super Bowl MVP or a potential, Super Bowl team in Dallas. Here is a Raiders team that was, they're good, and then they lost a few, then they won. So it was a really good litmus test, and they completely did not hold up. And the worst part, Mike, is that they had 10 days to prepare for it, and it didn't really look like that 10 days did anything for them. So now you move on. You're 2-5. I mean, if you beat the Lions, great. You're 3-5, but you've still got the Chargers. I mean, there are a lot of winnable, quote unquote, winnable games on the schedule.
Right, exactly.
But if you lose to the Lions, no one's going to say any of your games are winnable.
Yeah, and this is different from a couple of years ago when they lost to Miami, and you guys were like, that's embarrassing. And I said, you lose a game. And this is a game that if you lose, you're already 2-5. That team was in a different spot. They had been a playoff team.
Right.
They were still in the mix for the playoffs. You lose to the 0-7 Lions to fall to 2-6. That's a different kind of loss that makes the organization and the veterans feel like, what are we doing here? Like Kelsey yesterday, when he has that, the helmet thing, and that to me is him looking around like, what the hell am I doing here? Who are these guys?
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm playing with Kenny Gainwell. Right. I'm playing with Kenny Gainwell and Rieger. And who the hell are these guys? Like, I'm Jason Kelsey. I won a freaking Super Bowl, and this is what I'm out here playing with, right?
Then he goes back to the locker room and probably watches his buddy Zach Ertz catch a 47-yard touchdown.
Oh,
pass.
Well, that's the epitome of, like, Ertz has the nickname, what? Nose Yak Zach. Here he catches a ball and has not a human being around him for 40 yards, and he must have been like, oh my God, this is what it's like to be schemed open?
Yes, and slowly but surely, Carson Wentz is starting to rebuild himself back. I know he made a lot of questionable throws last night, but I also know it was pouring. Both quarterbacks made a lot of throws that looked ugly, but his team won, and he put the ball deep, and he was decent enough to say, hey, he's starting to look like a way better quarterback, at least than he was last year. And so that all kind of shines a kind of a negative light on the organization, its decision-making, the fabric that's holding it together right now. All of that comes under question.
What happened yesterday, in your opinion? They come out, great drive, under center, run the ball. Holy mackerel, play action to the tight end, 24 yards, nice pitch and catch, sets up a touchdown. Great drive. What ensues after?
All right, so there are a couple of things that jump out at me. Obviously, Miles Sanders gets hurt, right? So that when you don't have anybody other than Kenny Gainwell, a rookie who now has to play those snaps, what does he do? He fumbles in a key spot. To me, that was a big point in the game because you weren't out of it yet.
Spot on.
That gave Las Vegas possession, and the way they were going to score. So that was an issue.
Sounds weird to say Las Vegas. Continue.
It does sound weird. I have to check myself to make sure I don't say Oakland each time too. There were a couple of offensive problems I saw after they scored on the first possession. Ball placement was an issue with Jalen Hurts. as far as there were a couple of times he threw it to Devontae Smith and it was either low or behind. And this is a timing and rhythm based offense. You have to be precise. Those two defensive ends for the Raiders are real. I mean, they're for real. Those two defensive ends are really good. Crosby is tough, and the Eagles tackles did not play very well. So that was an issue. But I think if you were asking me the biggest issue, Mike, the offense didn't have time to get into a flow either because the Raiders ball controlled the heck out of them. In fact, I wrote this down, this stat I charted, right, which I've never seen before. The Raiders had 21 straight plays between the first and second quarters and scored 14 unanswered points in that span without seeing a third down. 21 straight plays without having to face third and anything.
It's
all right. And then the first 11 plays of the third quarter they had without facing a third down. So that means in a stretch of about 32 or 33 plays, it was 2 third downs that they had. And one of them they converted to Hunter Renfrow, of course. So when you can't stop anybody, first of all, that's an issue that you have on first and second down. They're just getting too many yards that you're not even getting to third down. So the strength of the Eagles is what? Rushing the passer with their 2 defensive tackles with Josh Sweat. Well, you can't rush anybody when you're on first and second down all the time. You're too busy playing run defense and short pass defense. So that to me was the biggest issue, is that the Raiders just did whatever they want offensively without even pushing the ball down the field.
Oh, I mean, look, they just nickeled and dimed. It felt like they just kept going over the middle, but the linebackers can't make a tackle, so you're missing a tackle in the middle of the field. I mean, it just and then, the whole Fletcher Cox thing, I want to get your thoughts on this because they brought this up in the post game. I think Joyner brought this up. He said, Fletcher Cox he knows the 2 guys behind him stink. So he's now compensating for the fact that they stink, which is now putting him out of position because he's trying to do too much because he knows the guys behind him can't help him.
Yeah, I think Fletcher was pretty much alluding to that. One of his quotes was that he's trying to be less aggressive. They're playing a less aggressive defensive front. They're not flying at the quarterback anymore. And he says sometimes he abandons that and becomes more aggressive. And he goes, sometimes it helps the team, sometimes it hurts the team. And I interpret that as saying sometimes it helps because I get to the guy and I make the tackle. And other times it hurts because I don't make the tackle. I'm not there. And then the linebackers have to come and get 2 350-pound guards off of them. And they can't do that and they can't get around them. So he's admitting to you that he's not in love with what they're doing schematically. And every once in a while he goes off script because he thinks it's the best thing to do. And then the real damning quote was not as much as the screenplay quote was that when he said, it's one of those deals where as a player, I don't kind of agree with what was called on defense. So I let my frustration go. And that's part of the game. So now you're saying now Jonathan Gannon's calling plays and he's got renegade players out there saying, I'm not going to do what I'm supposed to do because that's not going to help us.
Geoff Mosher, Inside the Birds podcast is out. They go deep into some of the issues on this team. And obviously, on the offensive side of the ball here, they ran the ball well. They play action, Ertz, and then they kind of got away from it. But one of the biggest disappointments for me was, your offensive line is supposed to be the strength of the team. They got whipped yesterday. Should we be concerned about that moving forward? Like Mailata, they gave him a big contract. Are we looking at a guy and saying, what the hell were they thinking? Did he have a bad day? Is he hurt? I mean, what happened there?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, the offensive line's been pretty good this year. The injuries have kind of hurt them, and I think that here's a case where Lane hadn't played the last 3 games, and then Mailata did at the right tackle. Then he had to move back to left tackle, and then you face this, I don't want to call it the perfect storm, but again, those 2 Raiders DNs are legit, and it's in Vegas, so they get the little extra bounce off the snap, and clearly the tackles did not hold up their own. But I can't remember too many games this year where you said to yourself, oh man, the offensive tackle has really hurt the offense this year. So it's something we can watch going forward. But, to me, that was a little bit more of an anomaly than what you've seen from the offense so far.
All right, that, and then obviously you have, it looks like Sanders is going to be out for a couple of weeks. What does that do to the offense? I mean, it's hard to kind of figure because he hasn't been a big part of the offense, but it seemed like they were just starting to incorporate him.
I know. I wrote in the story on InsideTheBirds.com, this is why the Eagles can't have nice things, right? That's a perfect example. They get a good, nice running drive on the first drive, and then he gets hurt on the second drive. So I imagine Jordan Howard will actually be used because I just don't think Kenny Gainwell is the type of guy that, even if you theoretically wanted to run the ball 15 to 20 times with your running back, crazy thought.
Well, they've won games with Scott. they have used Scott in that situation in the past.
Yeah, I think Jordan Howard. Well, I think they'll use Scott more, just like they did. But I would
Mhm.
imagine Jordan Howard's going to get an opportunity here.
Yeah.
If not, why is he even on the practice? If he's not here for that reason, why
Yeah.
is he even here?
Yep, and we saw Goddard 3 for 70, 23 yards a catch, and not enough targets for my liking there. Smith, underwhelming. He's been up and down. I mean, just doesn't have that special look to him yet. I'm not giving up on Smith, but he doesn't have that special look to him.
He doesn't have that Jamar Chase look to him. Is that what you're getting?
Hey, look,
Jamar
I ripped
Chase looks
them.
like
I
he's a
ripped
real
them, and I
man.
know what. Yeah, I ripped them. And Keyshawn this morning, same thing, thinking they should have taken the offensive tackle. It's hard. I mean, they're winning, and it's hard to take away what he's done so far. My gosh.
Yeah, it really is hard. Plus, the offensive lineman they got in the second round, I think Jackson Carman has been playing pretty well for them. So good on them. But yeah, I think Goddard had 5 targets is what he had, and Devontae Smith had 9. Gainwell had 8. That's, we know they want to throw those short to intermediary passes. I do think Goddard should have been targeted more. But again, I mean, they have 34 passes, and
34
probably
passes.
20 of them came probably in the fourth quarter or late third to fourth quarter. So the one thing we got to stop doing, and not that you're doing it, Mike, I'm just saying in general, Adam and I used to do it, and we're like, no, we got to stop giving them the old this team fights, they score a lot in the fourth quarter. No, they're scoring garbage time points by teams that are very gleefully allowing them to march up and down the field as long as the time comes down the clock. I mean, they've scored 19 points in the they've scored 60% of their points when they've been down double digits in the fourth quarter. So, I mean, we got to stop the whole they fight hard thing.
Yep. I know the trade deadline's on Tuesday, a week from tomorrow. Fletcher Cox, Lane Johnson, veteran players. Would you be surprised?
Here's the dilemma, and this is what I wrote today. If you're pawning off all these players because they're older players and you're starting fresh and you're going to usher in all these new draft picks and rebuild, that means you're sort of putting your faith in Nick Sirianni and Jonathan Gannon to be the ones to rebuild them with. And then you're going to have all these draft picks over the next year or two. But right now, Jeffrey Lurie can't be really thrilled or not even a little unconcerned that he may not have the right coaching staff here.
Yeah.
I don't like to do that to a coaching staff after 6 or 7 games, Mike. But the reality is they're not doing anything different, and now you're hearing players sort of question them. So that's got to be a red flag.
Fairly, in 16, Peterson in the middle of that season looked like he was completely outmatched, overmatched.
Right.
So it is hard when you come into a team who's in kind of like a flux. They're in the middle. The Eagles are kind of a team that is old on one end. They don't have a lot of young, they have a lot of young players, but they don't have a lot of young superstar type players. I mean, Chase Young's not playing defense, right?
Right.
So they're in a weird spot. So
you also worry real quick about this kind of second half of their schedule, which gets really light after the Chargers game, being a little bit of a hoodwink. Chip Kelly started off 3-5 in year 1, and then when Foles took over and they won these crazy games, he went out to Oakland. Foles threw 7 touchdowns. They beat Green Bay in Green Bay when Scott Tolzien started. They got every great bounce of the football that year, and they won the division. Then they played New Orleans in a home playoff game, and they stunk. And you know what? That was a harbinger for the fact that Chip Kelly's teams never really got better after that. 9-7, 9. They just weren't that good. So you would hate for the Eagles to win some of these games, and you think, oh, that's great progress. I believe in these guys. But what you're really doing is having an average coaching staff going forward. That would be difficult too.
All right. More on this, of course, during Football at 4 all week. The trade deadline's a week from now. We'll get into that, the injuries and more. Jeff's back on Wednesday. Andrew's here tomorrow. Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. And go check out the Inside the Birds podcast from this morning, where they go even deeper on a lot of these thoughts and conversations. All right, Moach. Thanks, man.
You got it, Mike. Talk to you Wednesday.
That was a good Penn State game, too, by the way. Sorry, I had to throw that in there.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Jeff Mosher here from the Inside the Birds podcast here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. 9 overtimes on a game you heard right here on 97.3 ESPN. Hey, I'm going to read off more of your text messages on the other side. I promise I will try to react to as many as I can. Keep sending them 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. Download the free mobile app and message us through the phone. And also, if you're watching the show live video on the YouTube channel, send me a message over there. I see all the comments going. So a lot of people go back and forth. I can't keep up with them all. I'll do my best. Plus, Paul Hudrick, the latest on Ben Simmons. Are they getting close to a resolution? That's coming up at 4:40 today. All right, 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app, 97.3ESPN.com. You can listen to us on the go. Download the app in the Apple Store, Google Play. So there's 5 things that really stand out about this game and where this organization is. This is an organizational kind of loss. Next week's game is a really, really big organizational type of game. If you lose to the Lions, who, by the way, are 0-7, I mean, do you see them going 0-8? I mean, they have a home game against a bad football team right now. You would think Detroit, this is a game that they should win. Like when we ask, is this a winnable road game? This is a winnable home game for Detroit at 0-7. They play hard. They fight hard. They've been in games. I mean, they were in that game yesterday against the Rams. The Eagles can't compete with the Rams. Are you kidding me? Right? The Eagles are not going to be competitive with the Rams. Detroit was competitive with the Rams yesterday. I mean, they had that game late. They gave up 11 points in the fourth quarter to lose the game, but they literally could have won that game. It was 19-17 entering the fourth quarter. Philadelphia's not hanging in there with the Rams. So you lose to the Lions next week, and now it is a complete organizational stare himself in the mirror situation. That is when the owners, like, you lose to the Raiders on the road. Okay, I get it. They look bad, but okay. You lose to the Lions, there's a big problem. And somebody just texted in about the fact that the talent across the league is pretty even. We say this all the time. The difference between 7-10 and 10-7, it's not all that much. Like, if you're a 10-7 team, you're a playoff team. You have a chance to win a Super Bowl. And teams at 9-7 in the past, 10-7 now, have won the Super Bowl at 9-7. The difference between 9-7 and 7-9 is not all that much. The difference between 10-6 and 6-10 is not all that much. So where Philadelphia is right now is not because they're completely devoid of talent, and they lack talent. But so does Atlanta and Carolina and Minnesota and all of the teams that are in the mix with you. There's an unusual amount of teams that are top heavy. We don't see this. They brought this up last night. Collingsworth brought it up. You don't see 5 teams so far out in front like you do this year. So there's 5 teams that are there. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12 are all in this pot of, like, we got warts all over. All these teams have these warts all over them. And Philadelphia has a lot of the warts. And a lot of their warts, yes, they lack talent. I'm not telling you that they have a lot of talent. They're just an average roster right now. So is Chicago. So is Carolina. So is Atlanta. So is Minnesota. You know, you look at the standings in the East, in the NFC right now. It's littered with teams that are having the same conversation that we are today. New Orleans doesn't have a lot of talent. They're playing tonight. They're 3-2. Minnesota, Atlanta, Chicago, Carolina, Seattle, San Francisco, Washington. All of those teams, they all are really lacking depth and talent. Depth is a big problem. Seattle doesn't have depth. San Francisco doesn't have depth. They have talent. They got hurt. They don't have depth. Washington, Carolina. You know, somebody talked about coaching and how important coaching is in the NFL. Yes, I know, 9-8. I get it. I said if you go back to the old way when it was 7-9, 9-7. If you go back, the difference between those teams are not all that much. Philadelphia's issue right now, yes, they lack talent, but they are poorly coached. You know, we talk in the NBA a lot about coaching. We talk about baseball manager. In the NFL, the coach matters. The scheme matters. The game plan matters. Because they call every single play. They call every play in the NFL. They call every play on defense, and they call every play on offense. They don't call every play in the NBA. They don't call every possession in the NBA. That's why in the college game, it matters a lot more because there's a lot more strategy, zone defenses. The coaches have a hand a lot more in the college game because it's not a players' league college. You got a lot of guys who aren't going to the NBA. Those games are schemed a lot more. The NBA, the NFL, it matters a lot. And right now, that's the biggest problem this Eagles team has is they are unprepared. They're not prepared. 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. Text board continues to Jay from AC. Yeah, man, I'm a big fan, but they need to call it over and begin to build for next year. Start scouting a new veteran coaching staff. Let me tell you something. They are in that building saying, look, we are not a Super Bowl team. We need to figure out who can play and who can't play. And a lot of times you're playing guys who can't play so that you could show them the tape to say, you can't play, we're getting you out of here. There's so many prerogatives, if you will, Bobby Brown. We want to get this guy playing time to see if he can play. We want to get this guy playing time to show him that he can't play. Sports Bash Live this hour brought to you by Prop Swap, America's sports betting marketplace. Hey, Sixers off tonight. They play the Knicks tomorrow. Sixers had an interesting weekend. They lost on Friday night to the Nets, but they won yesterday in Oklahoma City. But was there something Friday that trumps the win on Sunday? We'll ask Paul Hudrick coming up on the other side. Plus, Daryl Morey with an update yesterday. It happened kind of like during Eagles post game. So I don't know how many people actually saw it. We'll talk about it with Paul Hudrick, Liberty Ballers, Sixers next here on the Sports Bash, plus Casey Joyner at 5, Geoff Kerr at 5:30 tonight. All right, 4:43. The Sixers off tonight. They play the Knicks tomorrow right here on 97.3 ESPN. 7:30 tip time. Sixers lose to the Nets on Friday. They beat the Thunder yesterday. So what's the story of the weekend? Paul Hudrick, Liberty Ballers, is back here as we go inside the Sixers. And, Paul, they get the late loss, the way they lost that game, eerily similar to games over the years. They don't have a guy to get that bucket. They don't get a basket in the final 5:30. They blow a double-digit lead. So what's the story, losing that game or the way they bounced back and handled the Thunder last night?
It's still definitely the Friday night loss because, like you said, it's very similar to a lot of losses we've seen over the years, certainly very similar to a lot of losses we saw in that Atlanta series, just like, a few months ago. And that, to me, is a bigger issue. And you kind of touched on it. They don't have a guy at the end of games. I mean, Joel Embiid can be that guy at times, but it's really hard for a post guy to be that player. And I also thought that night, you could see the knee was bothering him that night. I thought he looked a lot better physically in Oklahoma City. So that was a positive. So I just think that is going to be like, even if Ben Simmons comes back to this team at some point, that's still going to be a big issue, is that at the end of games, where do you go with the basketball? Doc Rivers seems to think that if they just run their offense, they'll be okay. But I certainly have my doubts. I've been saying, since last season, I still, for years really, that I think they are still a shot creator away. Doesn't need to be a great shot creator, doesn't need to be a Dame Lillard or Bradley Beal, but they need something, a guy they can go to at the end of games that can just go get them a bucket.
Paul, how has the team defensively been without Ben? I mean, a lot of people say, look, you take Ben off the floor, defensively, you're going to feel it. Are they feeling that?
Honestly, through 3 games, I don't believe they are. I thought they did an excellent job against Brooklyn. I thought, James Harden, quite frankly, is having a difficult time through the first couple games of their season anyway. I think, as much as he didn't want to say it the other night, I think the rules emphasis have affected him a little bit. And he's probably not getting some of the calls that he once got, that he's gotten in the past. So I think that has hurt him a little bit. But I thought overall they did a fine job against Brooklyn. You hold them below 120. That's a win in the modern NBA. And I think Joel Embiid has been outstanding defensively. I think he's been defensive player of the year caliber through 3 games. I think as a team, their help defense, their rotations, their overall team defense has been excellent through 3 games. So would it be better if they had Ben Simmons? Of course it would be, because the guy might be the best perimeter defender in the entire NBA. But through 3 games, defense has not been the issue.
There's so much in the game from Friday night. I mean, Doc Rivers took a lot of flack, including from the broadcast. I mean, Jackson blasted him. He didn't call. Now, he probably should have called for a replay. My retort would be, I don't think I recall a charge ever getting overturned, especially for a player of Kevin Durant's magnitude. But what role would you say Doc Rivers had in the game Friday night in why they lost that game?
That's a tough call. I mean, I will say not necessarily the charge, Mike, because I think it was a charge. The NBA's last 2-minute report confirmed that it should have been called a charge, but I agree with you that if you challenge that on ESPN on a Friday night, I don't think that call gets overturned. I think they're going to keep that as a charge, and that's going to be what it is. The play I would have maybe liked to see them do is that play where it looked like it landed off KD's leg. To me, I saw a couple of replays. It looked like it hit off KD's leg. Maybe that would have been the play I would have challenged. Doc says they have a guy behind the bench that gives them the thumbs up or thumbs down on all the close calls, and he gave a thumbs down on all of them. So that's where they were with that. As far as down the stretch,
I like how that guy remains anonymous. Let's just blame a guy that nobody knows.
I'm sure through some deductive reasoning and some journalism, we could probably figure out who that guy is.
But I'm saying, it's easy and convenient to say, hey, we have a guy that tells us. Well, who's the guy? Let's talk to that guy. What is your reasoning here?
Right. No, I hear you. But
I got a lot of the social media I get, Paul. It was, Danny Green, 2 air balls. You got to get him off the floor. You don't score in the final 5. He made 2 threes to start the game. I mean, guys make shots. They miss shots. You can't just pull a guy off the floor. But did he stick with the bench too long? Did he not go? You know what I'm like? A lot of those little things in the final 5:30.
I'll say what I think hurt them more than anything, and I just think it kind of it was an is what it is situation, and that was you saw with about I think 7 minutes left, he was trying to bring Joel Embiid in the game sooner. He had him at the scorer's table ready to check in, and then Joel Embiid went back and according to Doc, Doc was a little bit fuzzy on the details of this, but it sounds like maybe Joel asked him for another minute for whatever reason to get more loosened up. Maybe he got up and then he didn't feel that great, so he needed a little bit more time. And I thought that couple of minutes hurt them not get Joel back in the game late. And then I think, Mike, sometimes guys miss shots. Like you said, Danny Green airball 2 threes. How often does he airball threes? I mean, he misses. How often does he airball 2 threes? And the second one was an excellent look. I thought Tobias missed a couple shots that he normally hits. I thought same with Joel Embiid. I thought there were a couple looks that he got that weren't terrible that he just didn't cash in on. And yeah, I do think there is an issue of them.
Well, put it this way, Paul. I got people saying that they're blasting Rivers because he didn't go to Korkmaz. I said, in what world are we in where now Korkmaz is a guy that has to be on the floor? Like, isn't that a little nitpicky if you're like, he has to go back to Korkmaz here?
No. And with all due respect to Furkan Korkmaz, who was phenomenal in the first game, you saw what happened. Like, look what happened in Oklahoma City when he had to go up against Lou Dort. Lou Dort put him in a box. I mean, he crushed him on those 2 possessions, and Furkan just turned it right over. I mean, Furkan Korkmaz is a fine player. He's a rotational player. He's good for
who has
team.
Improved this year, by the way.
Yes, for sure. But listen, to say that he should have been on the floor against Brooklyn and that would have changed the outcome, I think that's just silly. Listen, if you want to blame Doc Rivers for certain things, you want to say maybe he didn't call the right play, maybe some things he didn't do properly. But I think the 5 guys he had in to close the game were the right 5 guys. You go with the starting 5. Those are the guys that built the lead. I mean, I think it is definitely nitpicky to say that you should have put Furkan Korkmaz out there. I think that's a little silly. But yeah, listen, it falls on the coach when the team can't execute late in games. I will say that. And I think it's a combination of maybe things need to be different. Maybe they need to do different things at the end of the games. And I think also guys need to just be better. So I don't think you can just blame it on Doc. I don't think you can just blame it on the players. I think it is a team thing. I think it's a personnel thing, because I don't know that they have the right personnel that's going to help them close games. So it's a combination of those 3 things, and all of it has to get better.
All right. The latest on Simmons. The team apparently has stopped fining him for the missed practices and the games. Are we getting closer to a kumbaya here? Are we getting closer to a resolve in that Simmons has now addressed the team? The team feels comfortable with what he said, and that both parties can now move towards getting him back on the floor at some point this year.
I will say that whatever Ben Simmons said, we don't know the details. Obviously, all we were told from the reports is that he feels he is not mentally ready to play. When you look at the reaction,
by the way, just to say this, the people who are saying that they don't believe him after Game 7, that was the only thing everybody said was he's got mental problem. The problem is he didn't want to admit that he was having mental issues. He finally told the truth. It was just that he lied all the way up to the truth. Well, he cried wolf.
Yeah, I'll say this, Mike. And I'm not, listen, I didn't like the holdout. I didn't agree with it. I thought he should have come back hungrier. I thought he should have maybe, worked harder to shut some people up. And I thought that would have been the best route. He didn't go that route. But I will say, going back to last season, there was a game they played in Denver at the end of a road trip where he didn't play well. He played the whole team played poorly, but he especially played poorly. After the game, he had a really odd media appearance in which he said to us he needed to get his S together. And it's just, he came off odd. And then if you'll remember, not long after that, that's when he missed a bunch of games with an illness. I don't want to get into too many. I don't want to get, because there's a lot of gray area and everything and all, especially when you're dealing with mental health. I think you and I are on the same page that we are, huge advocates of that. We don't want to, take that. It's gray area, and you just don't want to cross any lines with that.
I just hope he's being sincere, because I think he's finally looked in the mirror and said, I need to admit I need help. It takes a big person to admit that.
Right. And I think, to get back to the overarching point of that is, I think whatever he said to the team, whatever he said to his teammates, clearly it had an impact on them. For Joel Embiid to go out there in front of 20,000 plus angry Sixers fans who are angry at Ben Simmons, and for him to come out and say, we need to support Ben Simmons. He is still our teammate. He is still our brother. And then for Tobias Harris after the game to go on a tangent, kind of going after everybody and like saying, this guy is human. We need to give him his space. We need to let him be. For all of those, for those two guys who are the leaders of this team, Joel Embiid, Tobias Harris, unquestioned the two leaders of this basketball team, for them to come out and have show such strong support for Ben and be that adamant in defending him and wanting to show their support. Clearly, whatever he said had an impact, and they believe it to be completely sincere. And Mike, I have no reason to believe it is not, because if that's something that you would fake like that, that's like, I don't even want to go to where that is, because that's right in a dark, dark place for someone who would do that. And I don't think that is the situation here. I think there are reasons to believe that Ben the guy's dealt with a lot. Let's just put it like that. Over the last 6 months, that guy has dealt with a lot. You can be angry at the holdout. You can be angry at the trade request, but the guy has been through a lot. So I think it's perfectly reasonable to believe that there are some mental aspects that he feels like are holding him back from giving himself completely to this team.
Paul Hudrick, Liberty Ballers, at Paul Hudrick on Twitter. Well put, Paul. Tomorrow night, nice one against the Knicks. We'll see how that goes. You can hear the game live right here on 97.3 ESPN. The game's in New York, and then they'll be back in action on Thursday night against the Pistons and back Saturday against the Hawks in a rematch of the second round of the playoffs. Paul Hudrick, my man, good to see you.
Good to see you too, Mike. Anytime, man.
There's Paul Hudrick, of course, this hour brought to you by Prop Swap. We appreciate Paul. He'll be on board all season for another edition of Inside the Sixers this year. We got more planned for you on today's show. Nick Sirianni, by the way, his press conference was supposed to be 4:45 today. It has been pushed back to 5:30. If we can get it, we'll give it to you live here on the Sports Bash. Casey Joyner, one thought every game coming up next. Stick there. All right, 5 o'clock hour here on the Sports Best Live 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. We, of course, have got a ton of reaction from the Eagles' loss. How they lost, why they lost, how do they fix it, can it be fixed? There's so much to discuss in this one. Is this a talent problem, a coaching problem? That's where we bring in Casey Joyner from The Athletic, the Philadelphia Inquirer. As you look at a team like the Eagles, and are they devoid of talent? Is it scheme? Are the coaches in over their head? There's so much here because, Casey, you look around the league. I mean, the team in the playoffs currently in the NFC, 2 teams are 500. So it's not like the difference between where Philadelphia is and New Orleans, Minnesota seems to be all that great. But when you watch a game like yesterday, you're thinking they're not competitive. Detroit's competitive against the Rams. Philadelphia is not competitive yesterday in that game. Why? Not enough talent, not prepared. What do you see? Because they have not been competitive in multiple games now. Yes, they've won some games. But when the competition level goes up, they are not competitive in those games.
I keep thinking about the other, rookie coaches in the league, and think of David Culley. Think how bad a situation he's got down in Houston. And he got him out to a 5-0 lead. He got him out, and he was playing hard, and they were doing well. And I know Philadelphia got out to a lead yesterday, but I look at him and I go, okay, he's doing so much better. And I keep looking at these other coaches who where their teams are, who they are, what they want to be. And then I look at the Eagles and I go, what do they want to be on defense? I'm not really sure. What they did yesterday was atrocious, and they can't want to be that. What do they want to be on offense? They say they want to pass the ball, then they're counting RPOs as passes, and they run more yesterday, but they really don't commit to it. They're doing runs only off of certain things. I'm leaning towards, because when I look at talent-wise, I didn't expect Philadelphia to be at this level, but when I look at where they're at and how they're playing, I'm leaning towards it is the coaches in over their heads, and I'm getting a little bit of a sense that the players are beginning to wonder, do the coaches have the solutions to the problems, which is the worst thing a coach can have if the players think that about him.
Okay, what do you do? I mean, obviously Gannon's running cover 2. That's what he was hired with that scheme. Why did you hire me? We like your scheme. Well, you're here and you don't have the talent to run your scheme. Is the coach supposed to change what he does, or is he supposed to say, why'd you give me these? You gave me these guys. I'm not going to change what I do. You got to give me better players.
The Steelers did better with Steven Nelson last year, and we've seen Slay play better. Here's the thing that bothers me most is that, that as a coach, you think, okay, we want to take away certain things with our schemes. Whatever you do on defense, you're saying we want to take this away. We want to keep you from doing this. Maybe you do something else. Maybe you go to a different player. And we're going to take this away from you. So they played cover 2 most of the day yesterday. That's supposed to stop vertical passes. And yesterday, Derek Carr, who had great numbers all across the board, he only attempts 7 vertical passes. He completes every one of them for 169 yards and a touchdown. He averaged 24.1 yards per attempt on vertical passes. So it's like, okay, we're going to try and keep you from completing vertical passes. They mostly threw dink and dunk, but when they went deep, they killed you deep, just like Kansas City did a couple weeks ago. So it's like what you're doing on defense isn't even stopping what you're trying to stop. You're not even being able to do the things. You're not able to take away things that you should be able to take away schematically. That scares me, because that says either the talent in the secondary is that bad, and I don't think that it is, or that the players are just playing soft on defense, which is something I've been saying for the past few weeks, that, hey, this is a defense that just is soft, inconsistent. They aren't sure what they're supposed to be doing. They don't look aggressive. And now you're 7 weeks into the season, and if you're saying that about defense, that's not just an adjustment to a new scheme. That's saying that there's something serious or wrong.
All right, so do they have – look, they don't have a defense filled with Pro Bowlers, but are they so devoid of talent that if they tweak their scheme up, that they would be better?
I think, honestly, that – and I know that maybe they don't have the talent to do it, but the Raiders have good players. The Raiders have some good receivers, but they didn't have great receivers. I mean, Ruggs and Renfro – and
I didn't hear Ruggs' name at all yesterday, Bob.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Zay Jones has beaten you on passes. Zay Jones a couple years ago, the worst metrics in the league. You're looking at that receiving core and saying that's a good receiving core, and they've got some talent, but they're not a great receiving core. And if you're not beating them at cover 2 and you're letting the quarterback complete 90% of his passes and crush you for 24 yards per attempt on vertical passes, go play man. Go do something. Challenge the players. Because I get the sense from looking at tape that the players are playing passively on defense. Like, okay, we're just going to let them complete things underneath us. And then we're going to be bend but don't break defense, but they're breaking far too often. And players don't like to do that. They will if you tell them to. And if you coach them up the right way, you can have a bend but don't break defense and be successful with it. But you've got to not break. And at some point, not breaking means you've got to come up and make the stops. You've got to be aggressive. And I still think I just get the body language sense from the players watching the game that the defenders want to be more aggressive. Let us be, because they just came out.
You heard it from Fletcher Cox yesterday.
Okay, yeah.
Cox said it yesterday. Like, I'm not allowed to be as aggressive as I used to be. That was one thing. I want to flip over to offense. They ran the ball. They went under center. They went right down the field. They ran play action. They connected for play action to Goddard, 23 yards. They scored a touchdown. And then what?
Well, you've got to – they keep doing all this, the zone read stuff, and the zone read stuff is great. I want to see them do more than just inside zone blocking. Inside zone blocking's easy blocking. It's all dry blocking, and it's and it's pretty easy for your front to read. Can you run some outside zone? Can you run some crack tosses? Can you run some traps? Can you run some other plays? Can you run some sweeps? Can you do something else? Because it's kind of a simplistic approach, and it can work. And fine, if it's working, that's good. But you can do other things in your play con. But it just seems there's so much into we want to make this zone read, and I keep looking at the offense going, they're making it so Jalen Hurts centric. And he's a really talented player. And I wrote about it in the Inquirer last week that per Pro Football Reference, he's on pace to rush like the fourth most rushing yards by a quarterback in NFL history. He's on pace to score the most rushing touchdowns by a quarterback in NFL history, at least tied with Cam Newton for first. So that's great. But you've got other talented players in this offense, and I keep seeing so much of it funneled through him. And after 7 weeks, we're still wondering, is he your quarterback of the future? And if he's not, why aren't you trying to develop an offense as an entirety so you have something to build upon in case you decide after the season that the Jalen Hurts experiment is over?
So Miles Sanders is going to be out the next couple of weeks. So it's obvious that once he went out, they had zero desire to run the ball. So what is the potential of this offense without Sanders in the backfield? Is it even noticeable? They don't run the ball to begin with, but you got Gainwell, Scott, I guess Jordan Howard might be activated, maybe. But what is the potential division here going forward? You wrote about that, I think, by the way, in your article at The Athletic today.
Yeah, I do a fantasy article at The Athletic every Monday. It talks about one question for every team. It does a lot of NFL content too, so you don't have to be a fantasy manager to get something out of it. But this article said, what's the workload split going to be like if Sanders is out? And it tells you something about what the Eagles want to do, because Kenneth Gainwell outsnapped Boston Scott by a 34-23 margin. They basically split the rushing carries, but Gainwell had 24 pass snaps versus Scott's 12 pass snaps, which means Gainwell is out in the field twice as often pass plays as Scott. And what it tells you is that they want this to be a pass-centric offense still, that even with Sanders out, they're not going to say, well, we've got two other backs who can do something here. We're just still going to go ahead and be a pass-centric team. It's going to get Kenneth Gainwell on the field even more often, and they're going to throw the ball even more frequently, which I keep looking at this going, this is not what you need to be. Your players are begging you to be more aggressive in offense, because offensive linemen love to grind and run block and things, and then we can go vertical, and the defense wants to be more aggressive, and the coaches are seeing that keep playing these schemes that just don't make any sense given the personnel. I've got a bad feeling about the season. When I watched all the tape today, my feeling was this could be a collapse season. This could be a season that goes really south. You think 2-5
if that happens, if you
Yeah.
have a collapse type of season, you just hired this coach. Do you make a decision to say we made a mistake? Or do you say we didn't have the right personnel for the guys we hired and we're in the process of turning our roster over? We knew that.
The coach has got to win with what you give him. So he's got to find a way. I don't like the idea that I'll put it this way. Would you make a change if you keep having this kind of passive system, if you keep having this kind of the kind of approach that they have, and you're not getting the players to play out? I'm looking at these other rookie coaches. I mentioned Cully, and look at Dan Campbell. He's getting the most out of his team. The Lions fans haven't won a game this year, and Lions fans are watching and pulling for this team because they love how hard this team is fighting. And you look at the Eagles in comparison, and you go, okay, the Eagles aren't fighting like this. If I'm Eagles manship, if I don't see an improvement and what they're doing and how our players are buying into the system by the end of the year, I at least have some serious questions for my coach to say, how are you going to win your players over? Because if a coach ever loses his locker room, if the coach ever loses the players, you have to fire him. You don't have a choice.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, they're in flux right now. They have an older roster on one end. They've got a younger. They don't have a lot of middle ground, and a lot of that is because they've missed in the draft in the middle ground areas. They haven't been able to replenish after the Super Bowl years, where one of the issues was they win the Super Bowl. I think they got an emotional tie to some of the Super Bowl guys, and they missed in the draft after those Super Bowls, and were making the playoffs. They made the playoffs in years that they probably shouldn't have, which pushed them further in the draft, which makes it harder to find talent. And they missed. I mean, Rieger has not helped them out. J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, obviously a miss. They don't value linebacker. That's a big problem. So you've got organizational philosophy coupled with past success that has kind of put them in a position where you have older talent on one end and not enough young talent on the others. This is a mess for no matter who the coach is.
I think we're now beginning to see that maybe Doug Peterson was doing a better job of what he was given than what we all thought. Again, I've asked him over the years saying, oh, he's not doing this, he's not doing that. Maybe he's had to fight some organizational inertia, organizational dissension, whatever you want to call it, where you don't have a harmony in which way you're going. Like certain teams, what they want to be, or at least the organization knows what they want to be. Maybe they had a lot more fights in there because of that. Because this looks like almost that it's a team. There's an old saying in offices that it's something that you plan by committee. You'll see something, hey, it's planned by committee. That's what this team looks like. A team that's being planned by committee. That there isn't a full direction. That somebody's saying this is the direction we're going to head in. And planning by committee approaches don't work in business, and they don't work in football either.
All right, Casey Joyner, one thought every game, week number 7. There was some wild stuff that happened in yesterday's games. Let's start with the Green Bay, Washington. We see Green Bay win again. Washington, offensively, they've been a disaster. Defensively, very disappointing.
They have, and mind you, they had a couple of plays there. If they convert some of those plays, they got down in the red zone and they had turnovers, questionable calls, questionable officiating calls. If those plays turned out, it might have turned into a much different game. So got to give them credit for fighting through that. But Green Bay, they've got a ton of injuries, and they're still finding ways to win impressively. So the Packers, if they get those players back, they get those injured players back, this is even stronger Super Bowl contender.
One thought every game. What's up with Kansas City? We talked about it Friday. Tennessee has the formula to beat them, and they did it again. They ran the ball at them, but they also stopped them.
They did. And the thing is Kansas City's banged up on offense now. Kelsey was on the injury report coming into this game. Hill was on the injury report coming into this game. Now you see what's happening. Obviously, Mahomes got hurt in this contest. Clyde Edwards-Helaire's out. They're getting banged up with some of their players, and I think we're realizing that when they don't have those players operating at peak efficiency, and they've had to funnel so much through them because they're trying to keep up in shootout games, that's a bad formula. I think they've got to get their defensive issues fixed. I think they need to, because teams are seeing that they can get aggressive against them and win, and I think they're going to have to do that because their offense can't keep up at this pace the rest of the season. If they don't get that fixed, it's going to be a long year.
One thought every game. Atlanta beats Miami. Now Atlanta all of a sudden is back to 500. Miami has been a total mess.
Talk about a rookie head coach. Go back to week 1. If you look at that game, Arthur Smith loses that game in Sirianni, and we're talking at that point, hey, what a great job Sirianni did. Arthur Smith has figured out what to do with this team. He's got injuries in a number of places, and he's still working around them. He's got Cordero Patterson playing great as the lead back now, by the way. Patterson has passed Davis. Yeah, exactly. Fantasy managers hate it. I got a point out of Davis yesterday. But he's got that team playing it to their talent level. In fact, if you look at those teams, you go, that's where the rookie coaches are, where they progressed. That's another thing that makes me worry about the Eagles. Is that Smith has got his team playing at that level. I wish the Eagles would do the same.
Well, you're funny because Sirianni made Smith look like a boob the first game. What happened there, right? It's completely flipped.
Yep, I think that Sirianni had a I would say a simple game plan, but he knew what he wanted to do, and I think that Smith is still figuring his team out. And now Smith has figured his team out, and teams have figured out what Sirianni's doing.
All right, the Jets looked terrible yesterday. New England put up 54. This is a mediocre Patriots team, and the Jets just fell completely apart. I like Mac Jones a lot, but, man, the Jets, they look like they've got a lot more questions to figure out than they have figured. You would think if as bad as they've been and as many times that they've drafted where they are, that you would start to find some pieces. Woo, that was a tough game yesterday.
That was one of the 3. There were 3 double-digit games, 3 games at a double-digit points by going into last week, and that was the one that I thought was the most the most likely to hold up to form with that, because the Jets you take away a couple of games, a couple of performances, and they're a really bad team. And they've been able to mask it well. And they've got a good coach who's got his team fighting hard as well. But they have some of the worst talent in the league. That's their problem. And that showed up.
All right. One thought every game. Let's go to Carolina. What's going on with them? I mean, they lost on the road. I get it. They're on the road, but they lost to the Giants and couldn't move the ball a lick against a Giant team. And the Giants had all sorts of injuries, and they couldn't stop the Giants yesterday. And we thought this was a good Carolina defense.
They were. There was a good Carolina defense. I covered them in that article I mentioned about The Athletic, and they had racked up 14 sacks in the first 3 weeks. Since then, since week 3, starting week 4, Carolina ranks tied for last in sacks per game and next to last in pass pressure per game. And the season matchups aren't good for them because they're not going to be able to get a pass rush against the really good pass blocking teams they're going to be facing too. And Darnold, I'm shocked that Darnold has fallen this far. I mean, I still thought he could be a mid-tier quarterback, the 15th best quarterback in the league, but he's next to last in yards per attempt over the past 4 weeks. He's just collapsed. That's why they benched him, and they're probably going to look elsewhere. So it's going to be a long season in Carolina.
Yeah, their name keeps coming up in the Deshaun Watson talks. Let's go. Cincinnati and Baltimore, 41-17. Is it time to take the Bengals on the road serious?
It is, because of their defense. As great as their offense is, and I wrote about CJ Uzoma, their tight end. By the way, fantasy manager, you need to put him at the top of your waiver picks this week, because it's not a fluke. I covered on that article there about some of the deep dive stuff of how integral he is to their offense. But their defense is playing superb right now, and that's the thing, is we've known they've got a powerhouse offense, and we've always thought their defense is kind of pushover, but they're able to go in there and do that. And Baltimore's been finding a way to get through some injuries, and it's finally catching up to them. They've got to get healthy, or else this is going to continue.
One thought every game. Detroit fights. I mean, they have a lead late. They give up 11 in the fourth quarter, but we talked about Friday. We thought them fighting hard would finally kind of fall on their face. It didn't happen, and they were in that game with the Rams.
What was it? Fake punt. They had a couple of trick plays. The onside kick, fake punt. They were doing a number of things. They were throwing everything they could at that team. They got to a 10-0 lead. They can only score 10 more or 12 more points after that. They just need more offense, and they're realizing that. I mean, the one mistake that they made was Goff, but they couldn't keep Stafford, and I get why they did it. But Goff is a placeholder. They need a better quarterback. But if I'm a Lions fan, I don't want to see the team go 0-16. They probably won't, because they're going to fight that hard. But I like what I've got in Campbell. I'm interested to see where he takes that team the next couple of 3 years, because you give him some talent, you give him some smash mouth talent, and he's going to win some games.
All right, one thought every game. It was another one that was close for a while. Then Arizona just pulled away 31-5. Houston obviously has all sorts of issues, but Arizona, they throw Zach Ertz into the mix. He leads them in receiving, has a big touchdown in his debut.
He does, and that was a case where I think Arizona just didn't take Houston seriously. They kind of tried to mail it in, and then Houston got out to a 5-0 lead and nearly knocked Kyler Murray out of the game. And they said, well, we better take this more seriously. I've got to say, though, as great as Arizona is playing, I keep saying, David Culley in Houston, give him some talent. You give this guy a few years, give him some opportunities here, because he still has that team playing hard. He still has that team putting together good game plans. He's a really good coach. And again, you give him some talent, this team will turn around. But right now, they're probably the second worst team in the league.
All right, one thought every game. Talk about overmatch. What's going on in Chicago? Tampa Bay 7-on-7 drills.
It was Chicago. Just their offense is atrocious. I even covered it in that article about how a fantasy manager just figuring how they're going to have to just drop the entire team because they're just that bad. When you're that bad on offense, and mind you, they've had some bad metrics in defense too, and they've got some weaknesses there. But when you're that bad on offense, all the team has to do is get you down a little bit, and they can put their foot to the floor, and that's what the Bucs did. I think it's going to be a really long. Matt Nagy doesn't survive this year. I don't think. Even they got a 3-3 start, I think this team's going to be on the verge of collapsing. He needs Andy Dalton back in the center as fast as he can get him, because this is just not working out with the Fields.
Not good. And by the way, he said he had COVID today, so we'll see what happens with Nagy moving forward. Carson Wentz, big game last night, playing well. San Francisco, what's happened to them? They get bombed. It was a monsoon last night. They got 30. They got beat at home.
They did, and it's a number of issues. People keep blaming the quarterback, but you had a banged-up quarterback coming back in off of an injury, and in that kind of a situation, he's got limited receivers. He doesn't have Kittle. He's got Samuel's really good, but that's pretty much all he has. He doesn't have any other receivers, and their running back core, they can get solid production, but they're not going to get breakaway runs out of them. So that's a problem. Their defense is kind of banged up. And give the Colts credit. Wentz is playing well, playing very. He's got 2 fumbles over the last 5 games. He's gone over a couple hundred passes now without an interception, which is amazing for what he had been. But he's playing much better. And Frank Reich, he knows how to get what he needs to out of that team. He knows how to build some game plans. And we look back on the Eagles and their success and things, and maybe Reich had a lot more to do with that than we thought too.
All right, one thought every game, including tonight's game, Saints and Seahawks. This is interesting. Right now, the Saints are the 6th seed in the playoffs. Seattle's 2-4. So if the Saints were to lose that playoff in the NFC, the 6 and 7 spots would be held by 2 teams that are 3-3.
Yeah, it's not the deepest. Hey, the NFC's top heavy. They got some great top teams, but don't have quite the depth that the AFC has. The problem for Seattle is their secondary and their defense is just atrocious. You look at their metrics in basically any metric you want to look at: run defense, pass coverage, individual pass coverage. Anywhere you look, it's just a really bad secondary. And not right now, they've got Carson out. They're going to go with Alex Collins. They've activated Rashad Penny, so maybe they may get a platoon between them. But Geno Smith is just not going to have enough big plays to keep up with New Orleans. I think so. I'll take the Saints in this one.
All right, there you go. One thought every game's back on Friday as we get ready for week number 8 in the NFL. It starts to move so fast. My gosh. Philadelphia, Detroit. We will take a look at that. The 0-7 Lions. Could they beat the Eagles? Well, we'll break that down with one thought on every game on Friday with Casey Joyner from The Athletic. Make sure you check out all his work at The Athletic and, of course, the Philadelphia Inquirer, and Mondays and Fridays right here for one thought on every game. Casey, thanks, man.
Appreciate it.
All right, there he goes, the football scientist Casey Joyner right here on the Sports Bash. And when we come back, Nick Sirianni is set to talk to the media. We don't get to hear from Nick that often on this show. He typically will speak beforehand, but they moved the press conference to 5:30 today. Why? Any big news coming out? Stick around to find out here on the Sports Bash. Download the free mobile app. We will be taking in Nick Sirianni here as soon as he steps to the podium. He's scheduled to talk at 5:30 tonight. Now, this was originally scheduled for 4:45. They moved it, so I'm wondering what the reason was that they moved it. Was the meeting a little bit longer with the owner today? Who knows? But they did move it. We will carry it for you as soon as Sirianni steps to the podium. We'll have it for you here live on 97.3 ESPN. So we'll see. Did something happen? Why did they just claim a quarterback today? That's another thing that's going on out there. So as soon as Sirianni takes the podium, we will take you to that right here on 97.3 ESPN. You know, we used to carry the pressers on Mondays, but he has bounced his time all over the place. Now, I get it. They were in Vegas. They came back. It's a little different thing. But, you know, typically every coach has had it at noon on Monday. Sirianni has seemingly been all over the place. I mean, he has been at 2:30, 2:45. Today, it's, so we will have the Nick Sirianni press conference coming up at 5:30 is the scheduled time. And as soon as he steps to the podium, we will carry that. Now, there's a lot of questions for Sirianni. You know, he gets him after the game, and you're thinking, well, what can he say differently? Well, now he has a chance to watch the tape. The reporters have a chance to kind of get off of the game and forward a little bit more. You know, there's a lot of questions at Sirianni. The comment that he made about, hey, well, I don't get to watch the defense all that much. You know, I don't watch the defense. I'm getting ready. You know, I'm calling plays on offense and I'm doing all that stuff. I think that comment, the Fletcher Cox comments, that needs to be brought up. Hey, Fletcher Cox sounds like a guy who's not buying into your defensive game plan. Is that a problem? 609-403-0973, 609-403-0973. It is the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN. By the way, before we get to the press conference, check out our website, 973ESPN.com. So I'm walking on the Ocean City Boardwalk yesterday, and I'm trying to time it out to get back to my house by the time the game starts. And I run into a wedding. Now, I have questions about the wedding situation on Eagles game day. All right. Where do you stand on that? Now, of course, it's all in good fun. Like people are saying, you know, the Eagles stink. And you don't know the Eagles are going to stink. Well, you kind of did. But so go check out the article at 973ESPN.com. I have like 4 or 5 questions that come up after walking the board yesterday. It was a beautiful day, by the way. Perfect day for a wedding on the beach. It was like when you get to a railroad track and the train's coming and everybody's just standing there. Wait, that's what happened to me yesterday. I'm walking down the boardwalk and the wedding party is starting to go. They're right in front of me. So I couldn't walk any further. I had to wait for the wedding party to go. Now, it looked like a lovely wedding. A lot of people down on the beach. But where do you stand on a wedding the day of an Eagles game? Where do you stand on that? Let me know. 609-403-0973, 609-403-0973. I got the pictures up. Now, the wedding party and the bride, they were up on the boardwalk. Everybody else was down on the beach. Right? By the way, the Eagles have cut their long snapper, Rick Lovato. Well, I don't know who they're going to pick up in his spot because you need a long snapper, but he just got cut. He's been dealing with a hamstring injury. They do not have a long snapper currently on the roster. They signed a quarterback here just about 15 minutes ago. So I don't know what's going on. I don't know where Nick Sirianni is, but as soon as he stepped to the podium, he was supposed to talk at 4:45. He is now late for his 5:30 start time. So you wonder, I don't know, it could be nothing. Look, there was so much in yesterday's game. I thought Sirianni, I want to like Sirianni. I want to like Sirianni. A young guy, you're hoping that, a young guy with new ideas. It's not working. It's not. I will say this. I remember when Peterson got hired and there was a bumpy road in the Peterson era, right? There was a bumpy road in the Peterson era in that first year that I feel like it didn't look like he was going to make it through the season. You remember people were talking about that, whether or not he was going to make it through that first season. When they were losing games, Seattle, Green Bay, Cincinnati, Washington, Baltimore, Dallas, New York. They lost 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 games. They lost 9 out of 11 at one point. They lost that game to Detroit. And it looked like, wow, he's not going to make it through this first year. And that turned out pretty good. Now, that being said, Sirianni, to me, has been extremely disappointing in that you had a young guy who you thought was going to come in here and kind of, show new innovative ideas in the offense to what the game is today. Vegas yesterday has guys wide open all over the field. All over the field, guys wide open. Why are the Eagles unable to scheme their guys wide open? It comes down to play design. Forget play calling. Play design has been a big problem for this team. It's a huge problem. And another thing with Sirianni, you talk about the fact that, hey, our guy says on 4th and 4, we would have gone for it. That whole situation. He is putting himself in position for major criticism that he doesn't need to take. You don't want to be the coach who comes in here and is now known to be the guy who's, hey, he's outthinking the room. He's got to be the smartest guy in the room. You wonder how much these guys right now, you had all day to fly back from Vegas yesterday, how much today they've had a chance to kind of sit down and talk to Nick Sirianni and say, look, this is some of the stuff that we need to go over after yesterday's press conference. You can't go out there and say that you're not paying attention to the defense. What did Geoff Mosher say earlier? Mosher brought up a great point, is that Peterson probably didn't do a lot with the defense either, but he had Jim Schwartz, who had been a head coach, right? He had a defensive coordinator that was a head coach in this league. He had a veteran defensive coordinator that he didn't have to kind of mingle over. It seems to me that Sirianni and Gannon are not on the same page. You wonder if there's a lot of hey, he's talking about me, take some responsibility, all that kind of stuff. And I, for one, am very interested in what Sirianni has to say, but he has yet to step to the podium. So you wonder what is going on up there in that he has not stepped to the podium to this point yet. So when he does, we'll try to get to you here on the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN. 609-403-0973. Yeah, there's so many different things that game brought out yesterday, is the fact that the head coach and the defensive coordinator just look completely outmatched. Every single thing in that game yesterday said that this team was just not prepared. The coaching staff not prepared. I'm wondering if John Gannon is being told, you need to change your defense of philosophy up. You need to be a little bit more aggressive. And John Gannon, is he saying, no, that's not what I want to do. You didn't bring me. That stuff is always such an interesting storyline to me. You have the roster that doesn't have the right players for John Gannon's defense. You brought John Gannon in here to do this. He's saying, you've hired me. You know what I did. Now you want me to change what I do? 609-403-0973. All right, we'll take a timeout. We'll try to get the Sirianni presser. If he does step to the podium, we'll finish out the show with that right here on the Sports Bash. All right, we'll get ready to wrap up the show. If Nick Sirianni steps to the podium, we'll have that for you here live on 97.3 ESPN. I'm Mike Gill. What's going on, everybody? 609-403-0973. A lot of texts coming in that throughout the show today. Mike Gannon has to go. The defense hasn't been prepared for a single game this season. Well, that's not really fair to say. They were prepared for game 1 when they beat Atlanta. They were prepared in game 2. They only gave up 19 points in that game. I get it. Like, we want to blast we had to stop being so sensational. They gave up 6 points in game 1. That's prepared. You give up 6 points. I don't care who it's against. They did a good job. They gave up 17 points in game 2. You give up 17 points and you're at home. Your offense needs to score more than 11 and win that game. So the Eagles defense did play well in those 2 games. They played well in the Carolina game in the second half. They only gave up 18 points. You give up less than 20 points in an NFL game, you should win those games. They really should have 3 wins. Now, they did not play well against Vegas, Tampa Bay, Kansas City, or Dallas. They got their doors blown off by all 3 of those teams. Fair to say. But the defense, saying they haven't been prepared for a single game, that's not really accurate. 609-403-0973. By the way, Sirianni still hasn't stepped to the podium. Still waiting on Nick Sirianni here. I don't know. Is he waiting for all the afternoon radio shows to go off so that he doesn't have to, be on the air with all these people listening to him? Everybody's kind of waiting for him to jump on. Let's a couple more texts. Let's see. Bill and EHT. Detroit will be tough. Look what they did yesterday. They tried an onside kick to open the game, a fake punt. At least they're trying to win. Well, the Eagles did try an onside kick. That didn't work. It's more desperate than trying to win. I get what you're saying, though. Yeah. The onside kick, that was another thing. We didn't even get to that. I mean, that's a desperate move. What else we got here? Mike Schwartz's D gave up a record 505 yards to Brady in the Super Bowl. Brady might have thrown for 1,000 against a Gannon D. Well, Brady did play against Gannon a couple of weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, was it? Was it last Thursday? Right? By the way, if people forget, Schwartz's defense gave up 17 points in the 2 games to get them to the Super Bowl. Convenient that we forget. Mike, I don't think this team believes in their coach or their quarterback. Hurts looks soft out there, but how much is his fault? If y'all lose to Detroit, Sirianni is gone. I mean, the way it's taken Sirianni to get to the podium now, he might be gone now. Can you imagine if he steps down, he resigns? Problem is they don't have a veteran coach on the staff to take. Maybe they do. Maybe Lori saw Rich Biacci yesterday and said, let's just turn it over to Jeff Stoutland. Let's get a veteran guy and just kind of, turn this thing around. I don't think that's going to happen. I'm just saying. I don't know what's taking him so long. He's an hour late for his press conference. An hour. It was 4:45. They moved it to 5:30. He's now an hour late for the original time. Unbelievable. By the way, Josh has game night coming up. He is in Florida, by the way. He is at the PFL Championships playoffs. So he'll be talking to you live from there. Mike, I'm a Browns fan, and what I see from the Eagles reminds me of what happened to the Browns when Hugh Jackson was the coach. Greg Williams thought he should have been the coach. Freddie Kitchens wasn't on the same page with the head coach, and Hugh Jackson was lost. My opinion is the Eagles hired the wrong coach, and the Eagles fans are in for a long year. Well, I see a lot of differences here. John Gannon doesn't think he should be the head coach. Freddie Kitchens was the offensive coordinator. The Eagles don't have an offensive coordinator, so I don't know that I see the similarities there. The only thing I see that's similar is they don't have enough talent, just like Cleveland didn't. But it's not like the offensive coordinator thinks he should be the head coach. He is the head coach. Sirianni is the coordinator. John Gannon doesn't think he should be the head coach. And if he does, he's not putting out a great resume. Like, if you had one chance to be a coordinator, After 7 games of getting your butt whipped, wouldn't you change up some of the things you do and say, God, what I'm doing is not working. I got to try some different things. A couple more text messages. 609-403-0973. Mike, can you refresh my memory? Honestly, I don't remember. Why did the Eagles get rid of Peterson? They were kind of not on the same page. I mean, I think it had to do with philosophy, what Peterson wanted to do, and what the team wanted him to do. You know, there was that report that they wanted him to throw the ball more. They didn't like the way his offense was going. So all that kind of stuff. By the way, no new updates. Sirianni was expected to speak at 5:30. There is not a new update. That is according to NBC Sports Philadelphia. Just throwing that out there for you. Got some more stuff. Mike, the coaching is bad, but what about Hurts' completion percentage? I mean, look, man, if it wasn't for teams like Tampa, Dallas, Vegas playing prevent D at the end of games, I wonder what his percentage would be like. No, Hurts has been bad, man. Hurts, not bad. I mean, he just has been inconsistent. And when you're inconsistent, you're having there's plays to be made. He's not making them. The play calling's been bad. It's like last year where Wentz wasn't playing great, but there was plays to be made. Wentz wasn't making them. Peterson wasn't all that creative. This offense isn't all that creative. I think Peterson last year, like we would argue all the time, I thought Peterson, there were plays for Wentz to be made, and he didn't make them. There's plays for Hurts to be made, and he's not making them. But I also think that the play calling here has been a huge problem. I think it's been a huge issue. Not creative, putting too much in Hurts' lap, asking him to do too much. I think they have much better talent offensively than what Wentz had last year. What else we got? You guys were overload on the text messages today. Good stuff. Do you think it would help Gannon if he called the game from up in the booth like Jim Johnson used to? That way he can see the field. I don't know about that. I've never called a football game, so I don't know if being up in the booth or being down the field. I know a lot of people like to look from up above so they can see what's going on. Hey, at this point, you try anything, right? Mike, the Eagles need real linebackers. They're forever behind and chasing the offense. Yeah, their linebackers stink. There's no that's not a secret there. What else we got? Mike, this is from Alex in Delhaven. I like to see the Eagles give Louis Riddick a shot. You know, I'm not anti-Lou Riddick. I will say this about Louis Riddick. We always want to hire the guy that's on television, you know, like John Gruden, Bill Cowher, these guys that were on TV because we know them. We like their analysis. That doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be a great general manager. I think Riddick would be a smart guy, though. I'm just saying, let's not just get enamored because the guy was on TV. That's all. You know, John Gruden was the guy on TV. Everybody thought they should hire John Gruden because you know him from television. Everybody wants to hire Seth Joyner to be this or that, or, you know, there's a reason why former players, you know, typically don't get jobs to be the coaches, you know, or front office jobs. John Elway is a rarity to have a franchise icon run your franchise. Like, you don't see that a whole heck of a lot. This team has a lot of issues, and I was hoping to hear from Nick Sirianni today here on the show. It appears that we are not going to be able to get him. I mean, it appears that he is not going to speak he's certainly not going to speak by the time we end our show today. 609-403-0973. I'll continue to read off some of the text messages throughout the course of the day today. You guys have really done a good job of texting today. Mike, there's a lot of oil leaking everywhere from this team. However, it is painfully obvious that Sirianni is in over his head. Yeah, I mean, right now it looks like Sirianni is in over his head. I'm not going to doubt that. I'm also not going to say that, look, 7 games in, can he like, hey, okay, I'm struggling here, I'm struggling there, I'm struggling here. Is he a smart enough guy to figure it out? That's the question. You know what I mean? Or is he just completely befuddled that he can't, learn from his mistakes? That is what I think you got the next 10 games to kind of figure out. Over the next 10 games to figure out. And if Sirianni, look, if they lose this game to Detroit, I am on the record right now by saying you're going to have big problems, pandemonium. I mean, you're going to have big problems losing to an 0-7 team. I think the fans are at a point now where they almost want them to lose. They want to go down that road. But for the mental psyche of the organization, losing this game, I think, would be a horrible setback and blow to what is a positive feeling offseason because of all the draft picks, capital. And look, the trade deadline's next week. You have an opportunity to add some more picks in this draft. If I'm Howie Roseman right now, one of the things about Roseman, I hate Roseman, he stinks, he's horrible. He might get you the number 1 pick in the draft because of that trade they made on draft day with the Miami Dolphins. Don't downplay that. He made that trade, and that could net them the number 1 overall pick. Now, the problem is it's like when the Phillies got the number 1 overall pick. There's not a franchise quarterback in this draft. So what do you do at number 1? I take that kid from Oregon, if you watched him on Sunday or Saturday against USC. That was the one game I told you this weekend that I really wanted to watch. Whew. If you get the number 1 pick, that's the guy you got to take. This team needs a legit outside pass rusher. Not, Josh Sweat's a nice, situational guy. Derek Barnett stinks. I cannot wait until Derek Barnett's out of here. He is terrible. My gosh. All right, Josh is up next with Game Night. He is live at the PFL at the Hard Rock, Hollywood, California. He will be live from there. I'm back tomorrow. We've got Monday Night Football tonight. Saints and Seahawks. I guess you're rooting for the Seahawks tonight, would be my guess. You got to root for the Seahawks tonight. All right? No Sirianni. If he comes to the podium, well, he's not going to now. We're going to miss it. But if he says anything of note, we'll, of course, be talking about it tomorrow right here on the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN. Check out our website, 973ESPN.com, for all the latest on the Eagles, Sixers, Phillies, and Flyers. Flyers, by the way, they are off until Wednesday. Game 2 of the World Series. Game 1 of the World Series tomorrow night.